All right, we will call to order the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, April 4th, 2018. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Sarah.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Mayor?
Here.
Gorfulet? Here. Klaus?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Crawford?
Here.
And I show Wheelock is excused.
Okay. We have approval of the minutes of March 21st, 2018, our last regular meeting. Anybody have anything?
Move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Okay.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Gorfulet, supported by Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now is our chance for first public comment. Sarah, will you read the rules, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may at his or her discretion extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4 Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson. Please be respectful and refrain from personal or political attacks.
Thank you. Also, we have a lot of different topics for this evening that I suspect a lot of people would like to speak on, and I will give chances throughout the agenda for public comment when your specific topic comes up. But if you'd like to speak right now, go ahead.
Steve Largent, 5445 Sharman Road, Traverse City, 49696. First off, I want to make it clear that I'm here as a citizen, not as Drain Commissioner. Also, I'm speaking to you at the first public comment because I need to leave early. My wife works at Munson, and she's receiving a 35-year pin tonight for her service at Munson. But I started out working with the Conservation District 30 years ago when I worked as a college student for the City of Traverse City at the Brown Bridge Quiet Area as a seasonal temporary. Next month will be my 26th year working for the Conservation District. And during that time, I can't tell you how many employees, good young employees, I've seen come and go from the Conservation District because the Conservation District can't pay enough to keep them. We train good people, and then they leave for better paying opportunities. And there's many examples out there. Right now, McDonald's is offering a higher starting wage than our most recent hire with a college degree. We live and die by grants at the Conservation District. It's no way to live or try and raise a family with that kind of uncertainty. Nearly every year I would think it might be my last because of budgets were so tight. The only way I could afford doing what I did is that my wife, who works at Munson, was able to carry our health insurance, and so this was not a liability to the Conservation District. The Conservation District has been around since 1941. That's 77 years. They've provided natural resource management service to the people of Grand Traverse County, and all I'm asking is that you let the voters decide if they want the Conservation District to continue providing these services and at what level. We provided quality natural resource management services to the residents of this county and region in a very cost-effective manner. In fact, if you see the trucks we drive, the equipment we use, in most cases they're worn out and it's very dangerous. The Boardman River program that I'm still driving around a 1997 4Runner that was donated to the district 10 years ago. It's time that we let the voters decide if they would support a millage to properly fund the Conservation District. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Hi.
Good evening. My name is DJ Shook. My address is 543 West 10th Street, Traverse City, Michigan. I work in conservation, although I'm here as representing myself and my family. I've worked for 2 conservation districts in my career, one of them in Washington State and then one back here in Michigan. I've spent over 12 years working in the field, and I just want to reiterate what Steve said, is there's a lot of good, very well-qualified and motivated people that work in the field of conservation. It's one of the best parts that I feel about my job, is being able to work with the quality individuals that I get to work with. And I just wanted to say that as a person who has purchased a home and I am raising a family, it will go a long way for the people working in that field to have a little bit more security on their job as they move through the different phases of their life. And they are very dedicated. Conservation, in my mind, is an investment. It's an investment in the future. If you make a small investment, especially with the highly dedicated people, it's going to be very profitable in the future. And then the last thing is, since I've worked and tried to make a living in the conservation industry, it just seems like it's not something that the free market provides opportunities for. Conservation is something where it's the appropriate role of government to step in and provide that service to the public. It's just not something that the free market is able to supply to the community. So I ask that you support the millage going on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Estes, 1023 Tacoma Drive. I'm a city resident. Good to see all of you here in fine spirits, considering our weather isn't the same. I unfortunately, or I should say fortunately, have 4 grandchildren at home waiting for a pizza dinner, so I'm going to take this opportunity to speak publicly ahead of what I normally would. You have an exciting meeting coming up tonight. The Fisk Passage is a very exciting project for not only the county, but for the city. And there's nothing you need to vote on regarding that issue, but I know your constituents want this project completed. Many, many years ago, when only Mr. Wheelock was part of this board, had you voted with the city to actually proceed with the dam removal and improve the quality of the Boardman River. The Union Street Dam is the last hiccup in this whole project. So hopefully we can get that done on schedule and move forward. My main concern tonight is you have 2 millage proposals in front of you. If you are opposed to millage proposals on the merit of millage proposals, then I could honor your vote to say, don't put it on the ballot. But otherwise, there are entities who believe the public has a right to vote on this, and I am one of them. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to vote for either one of these proposals, and there may be more coming down the road in November. Okay, we don't know that yet. But I think as commissioners, at least give the public the right to say yay or nay to these proposals. Let those people who are for it advocate for it, and those against it to do the same. Give us the right to say yes or no by allowing this proposal, any proposal, to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Frank Deturi, 2800 River Bend, Traverse City, Michigan. I'm a Great Traverse County resident. I'm here for 2 reasons tonight. One would be to support the Fisk Pass project that Michael was just speaking about. I chair the implementation team, the implementation team that is responsible for recommendations and guiding the Boardman River Restoration Project, is fully supportive of the Fisk Pass project. I'm also a Grand Traverse County representative, a Grand Traverse County resident that appreciates the work and efforts of the Grand Traverse Conservation District over the last 32 years that I've lived here. Staff there is all the staff that I've ever come across at the Grand Traverse Conservation District. They've been awesome folks. They're dedicated individuals. I would support, I hope you will support the ability for the public to chime in and vote on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nate Winkler. I live at 420 12th Street and in Traverse City. I'm a biologist for the Conservation Resource Alliance and also one of the project managers on the dam removal project. Right now I'd like to speak to the issue of the district millage proposal. I've lived in Grand Traverse County all my life, and the district has been a presence in this community ever since I can remember. And they carry their burdens pretty well. They manage to do great things for our community on a shoestring budget, and we should applaud them for that effort thus far and allow them an opportunity to help stabilize their annual funding sources by allowing the voters to have a say in the millage. This county is facing development pressures that no other county north of Clare, I would reckon, is facing and has done so for some time. And I feel like an investment in the stewards of our county public lands is an investment in a quality of life that is every day less and less inclined to be quality due to the level of development that occurs in the area. And the district has been doing great work in maintaining trails that are seeing a lot more use because we have many more residents in the area and visitors. And professionally, I know I can pick up the phone, get on the horn with Steve or any of the district staff, Reb, Tom, and say, hey, there's a tree down across the river. I don't have time to go cut it out of the way. You think you can send somebody over there? If a trail is requiring maintenance because of garbage or trees are across it or whatever, there's always somebody there to answer the phone and make something happen. And they're a very, very valuable part of the environmental conservation community in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Tom Busamra, 13482 South High Point Drive, Traverse City, Michigan, 49684. I come to offer services of retired Judge Jim McCormick and myself for consideration on the jail ad hoc committee. Jim McCormick, as you know, has a great familiarity with the legal system and the workings of the jail. And in addition to that, he often subbed for me on Sunday mornings to help provide a worship service on Sunday mornings. I've been going to the jail for 32 years now in that chaplain role, but I really wear another hat, so I almost want you to forget for a minute that I am that, I've been doing that chaplaincy work. I also do counseling work, quite apart from any evangelization or religious purpose. As chair of Before, During, and After Incarceration, I gave these pamphlets to you once before. We really are making a strong effort as a growing nonprofit in Traverse City to partner with agencies, with jail staff, hopefully with the Commission, Community Mental Health. We've had a presence going on in a lot of different ways. And we made some successes in family support. We have a monthly support dinner. We have had a Christmas gathering for families. We're hoping to move into Camp New Day for the kids of inmates, get them have a positive experience at a summer camp. That's just one area. Release referral was going strong. It was meeting with folks on their way out of jail, a couple weeks, 3 weeks before they were released, trying to meet their needs, housing, work, medical, dental, whatever. Our volunteers were working with them and getting them stable, trying to bring down that recidivism rate and hoping that folks wouldn't just revolve back in. So that's another area. And the only reason it's suspended is because, as you know, the staffing at the jail is severely short at this time. I believe we're 8 down. That's putting a crimp on a lot of progress there. We've been making strides, I believe, in the area of mental health and addiction. Another licensed counselor comes in Sunday nights, as I'm doing, and I hope to expand that. Again, it's a matter of staff to allow us to have the ability to come in and out. We're ready with life skills programming. We have 10 skills that we want to sit down with jail staff and see how we can implement them. So we're really there wanting to partner in several different areas. Another area is advocacy and communications. We want to have some community events that advocate for restorative justice and rehabilitative programming. These are our neighbors, our co-workers, our parishioners. Our purpose is to see that their families are supported and they come back to our communities as successful citizens. So I would hope that you would consider myself willing to throw my hat in the ring to serve on that committee, and so is retired Judge Jim McCormick. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. David Schaefer, Resource Recovery Department Manager. I wanted to take this opportunity to say hello and briefly introduce myself. I expect there'll probably be more opportunity for question and answer at a future meeting. I wanted to thank Nate and Dean and Chris and their staff for making the transition really exceptional. This is my 3rd day on the job. I think a lot of progress has been made. I'm really excited to be a part of the team. I wanted to again put a face to the name. I also have a little bit of information. Next week we have our first HHW of the season. That's on Thursday. So if any of the commissioners would like any more information to get to the constituents about that, please contact my office. We also have an awesome event coming up for Earth Day. And I have flyers. If I could approach the commissioners, I'd be happy to get these into your hands. Chris may talk a little more about that.
What Dave is talking about is the Recycle Smart County Senior Center Parks and Recreation Earth Day event at Twin Lakes Park. It's going to be held on Earth Day, which is the 22nd of Sunday, the 22nd of April, between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. It'll be a great way to showcase the park. We have about 28 partners who will be there. We'll be in the lodge, we'll be outdoors, we'll be taking over the whole place. We'll have live music, live raptor program from Wings of Wonder. Smokey Bear and Woodsy Owl will be there, the DNR. There will be food for purchase from a food truck, and composting demonstrations, nature walks led by our rangers, campfire safety, and more. So tell everybody, and it should be a fun day, even if the weather's not great. Hopefully it'll be better than today. I think that it'll be a really fun event and a great day to get out. So we appreciate your helping us with this.
It's going to be a good party. Look forward to hopefully seeing you next Sunday.
And then I have one more announcement regarding Easling Pool. We have been, as you know, trying to raise funds and meet our goal of $625,000. We now have surpassed $518,000. We need about $107,000 more to make this happen. It is our intent to finish raising funds by the end of May, and then in July we'll commence with the refurbishment project. but we need all of you. Please consider contributing if you haven't, commissioners. Please spread the word again about this. Anybody out there listening, we're looking to close the gap, and we're really getting close. So we're very excited about that. And one last thing, I have 28 seconds, aren't you lucky? We're having an aquatic facility operator certification course. For anybody out there who operates a pool, excuse me, we want to open it up to anybody who's at a hotel or whatever. It's going to be April 30th and May 1st at the Civic Center in the arena. And we hope you can join us. It's $300, including materials and testing, and you're certified for 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say there's also a GoFundMe campaign for the Eastling Pool. If you can go and search that on the internet, and that's a way to make lots and lots of small donations really add up for them. Yes, sir.
Good evening, I'm Thomas Wirtz, 3892 Forest Lakes Drive in Traverse City. I'm a physician by trade, a conservationist at heart, and I've been serving on for 5 years on the Conservation District Board. I'd like to read 2 letters for some individuals who weren't able to come here. The first one's from Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy. Dear Board of Commissioners, the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy has enjoyed a long history of productive and positive partnerships with the Grand Traverse Conservation District, and I'm writing to express our support of their pursuit of a local millage. For over 2 decades, the Conservancy and Conservation District have leveraged each other's mission and worked to protect the Boardman River watershed. We've been proud to collaborate with them to accomplish critical conservation work with the Invasive Species Network. While the Conservancy works to protect our region's working farms, the district manages the MEAP program to be sure those farms also protect our freshwater resources. We understand the unique role of the Conservation District and value opportunities to partner with them. This community needs a strong conservation district. A millage would provide much-needed funding, which would be leveraged wisely for the good of our entire region and our national resource. I encourage you to support the Grand Traverse Conservation District and their pursuit of this millage. Sincerely, Glenn H. Allen, Director. The second is from Boardman River Clean Sweep to Commissioners. Grand Traverse Conservation District is seeking an approval of a 0.1 millage for maintenance of their building and grounds on Cass Road. I cannot fully express in words the value that the GTCD brings to our community. The Boardman River Clean Sweep has worked alongside the Grand Traverse Conservation District since 2004 to maintain the Boardman River and surrounding woods for the entire length. Without the GTCD, the Boardman River would be a garbage dump. Their support and assistance has been so important to us that we would not have been able to continue without it. What the GTCD has done for the river pales by comparison to all the other projects and restorations it has done over its years of service to Grand Traverse County. I highly recommend that you favorably consider this request for millage funding. Sincerely, Norm Fred, Chairman. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Mark Spencer. I'm from 640 Bays Drive, a lifelong Traverse City resident. Did want to echo the doctor's comments. I'm a very good friend of Glenn Chowns. I've had family members work at the Grand Traverse Conservation District, and 0.1 mils is a steal for you guys. You know, this area is clearly seeing that preservation of the natural resources in the immediate area is vital to continued growth and setting our area apart for future growth. My father, John R. Spencer, ran the Olson Foundation for upwards of 25 years, was a donator, constant supporter of the soil conservation programs, and they're just they're generally vital to education. I've got grandkids that have gone to several of the open houses there, have really achieved a real good understanding of the natural environment by doing so. So we strongly encourage the board to consider putting this millage before the people. And that's what's under consideration right for August, getting on the ballot. You know, the recent problems the school district has had as far as, you know, not that you guys are underhanded, but, or they are either, but you want to definitely put this out front and have it above board and let the voters decide.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Lemkool.
Good evening. Herb Lemkool, 907 Meadow Drive. I was a county commissioner for 16 years. Many of those years, I was a liaison to the Conservation District. I was able to see firsthand how they struggled year after year after year with their budgets. So, when I got the message that they were going to go out for a millage, I said, I will step up to the plate and be in favor of this 100%. So I encourage you to put this on the ballot so the people of the community could find out really all the wonderful, great things that they do for our community. They touch every one of our lives every day. The Boardman River restoration wouldn't have gone as smoothly, I don't think, without the Conservation District and Steve Largent coming up to the table to be able to say, we care about our river. We care about our community. We care, so therefore, I want you to care and support this millage, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Herb. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Susan Petter, Petter, from 2594 Voice Road in Kingsley. I didn't want to get in on all the middle of the Conservation District millage because I'm here tonight to ask you to put a millage proposal for animal control on the August primary ballot. From late 2015 to sort of the present time, animal control has been in a state of flux, from being basically eliminated to one part-time officer to the current 2 officers, from the health department to, I understand anyway, to the sheriff's department and wherever. There's not been any permanency to it. Although I'm glad to see the current support, I know it's very tentative. There is not united backing from this commission, and since the current funding is only for 1 year, the next budget or the next commission could end it again. That's why I'm asking you to vote tonight in support of the millage to fund animal control on a more permanent basis. The amount being requested, about a third of a mill, is about $3 or $4 for the average home. That's less than a meal at Burger King. Or if your home is far above average in value, that's still less than one dinner out at an upscale Traverse City restaurant. To get animal control services for an entire year for the entire county. At the last ad hoc committee meeting, Jennifer Isbell submitted a list of over 900 people who supported putting the millage issue on the ballot. I think that shows there's a strong backing for doing this. Because it's not a special election, the cost to include it on the August ballot would be very minimal. Whether the actual millage is approved or not is up to the voters. And I just really feel that this is the time to let the voters decide on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is David Tucker, 16747 Wrightwood Terrace in Traverse City. And why I'm here tonight is also for the proposed animal control millage. Maybe I have a little bit different experience than a lot of folks have with this because I've kind of been through this before. I'm the retired director of the Humane Society of Genesee County. And while I was director, I could see what happened to the Genesee County Animal Control. Genesee County were like here, separate entities. Humane Society separate from Animal Control. Animal Control, while I was there, I saw their funding cut in half. Now, they were much larger than Animal Control here, but they were down to like 3-4 people to do everything, including they have a facility for adopting out animals. And so these folks had to take care of the animals, the normal daily stuff like you do at the Humane Society. And they were just really cut down to the bones, and it caused an awful lot of strife within the community because they just could not do their job. During that period of time, while it was cut, some of the commissioners proposed that it go to the sheriff. And the sheriff, who was an extreme animal lover, said, no way, that is just not our job, and we can't do it effectively. Well, this proceeded until 2014 when there was a new batch of commissioners, and they put on the ballot in November 2014 a .2 mil proposed millage. And that was adopted by the citizens of Genesee County because they saw the importance of having an active, involved animal control. As you probably know, by just about every measure, Genesee County folks are very fiscally challenged, but they saw the importance of animal control and taking care of the animals and the difference that it makes both in what is actually being done and how folks view their community. So I would very strongly support consideration for putting the millage on the ballot and let the people decide. All that can happen is they say no. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Isbell with Pet Friends Magazine. I live at 585 Spring Hill Road. I actually wasn't going to talk tonight, but it turns out I have things to say, so I'm here again. So I have 4 main points. The first one is, why should we do a millage instead of a general fund? A millage will provide stable funding because we learned in 2015 that the animal control can be eliminated without any notice, and we don't want that to happen again. Number 2 is there will be a different administrator this year and possibly different commissioners in November. We just don't know who will be here, and we don't know their level of support for animal control. Number 3 is that with a millage, the money and the staffing was basically recommended by the health department, which runs animal control. And I prefer to listen to what they say is needed, no offense, as opposed to what you guys might want to vote for or the staffing you might think they need, even though they asked for a certain amount. And that brings me to the staffing of the department. A lot of people don't know the history of animal control, so I'm kind of going to give a brief summary. In the 1970s, it was actually in the sheriff's department, but the department was kind of out of control, and it was kind of a good old boys kind of network. So the health department, Fred, is it Kiesler or Kessler? He was asked to run it. He saw that there was funding available. I believe it was funding from the state of Michigan in regard to doing the rabies services, and that's why he took it on. And if any of my information is incorrect or anybody knows differently, let me know. This is just from my sources that I've talked to over the years. And over the years, most of the time, there were actually 3 officers. Occasionally, there were 4, and possibly one year even 5, because they had the help of some jail trustees. And they also had a part-time person who did some dog census work. So the fact that the health department did ask for 3, or actually 3.5 workers, is not some kind of new thing out of the blue. When Ed Hickey was hired in 1996, he was one of 4 people in the department. What happened over the years is that the department kept getting chipped away, including the size of the trucks. I found out that they actually had full-size trucks, and now they have the littler ones that they have today. So after a while, it just ended up being Ed and Cindy in the department, with, of course, the manager, Tom Buss, in the health department, and the director as well. My third point is kind of what the couple other people said, was that when you decide whether to put animal control on the ballot, I ask that you decide on the merits of this millage on its own and not based on how many other millages might be on the ballot at the same time. It's a rather small amount, and I just ask that the public be able to decide. The last but not least, I'll be very brief, is I've heard somebody ask, well, why do it in August? And these comments are more for the audience and the media because the commissioners already know this. Budget talks are done in the fall, and budgets are decided in the winter. The commissioners approved the 2018 budget around the 16th of November. So why would we want to wait to have an animal control millage on the ballot in November? The commissioners need to know in the fall what services they need to fund. Ultimately, I believe the millage will pass either way, no matter what month it is, but it makes more sense to me to do it in August.
Thank you. Anybody else? There will be chance to talk at these specific items come up in the agenda. Everybody good? Okay, we will move on to approval of the agenda. My first change is that we will be moving the Commission on Aging ad hoc committee appointments up to right after the consent calendar, right before special orders of business. The COA director has somewhere else she has to be, I believe, this evening, and she would like to be here for that. So we're going to move that. Anybody else? Any changes? Cheryl?
I would ask that we table item 9C for our next meeting. We received a 30-page packet the middle of the afternoon. I was working and didn't have time to go through the 30-page packet, and I'd kind of like to go through that before I vote on this. So I'm asking that we set that for our next meeting rather than tonight.
Okay, so we will remove that in favor of April 18th. Anybody else? I have a motion?
Move we approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second that.
Moved by Commissioner Johnson, supported by Commissioner Mayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. We will move on to the consent calendar. Sarah, please.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. All information identified on the consent calendar can be viewed in its entirety at www.grandtraverse.org. A, receive and file. 1, Community Action Agency minutes of February 15th, 2018. 2, Department of Health and Human Services minutes of February 23rd, 2018. 3, Road Commission report. B, approvals. 1, Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office surplus equipment and bicycles for auction/disposal. 2, Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office, Michigan Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Medical Marijuana Grant. 3, Commission on Aging change in staffing plan. 4, Commission on Aging outside agency funding. 5, Health Department annual flu vaccine purchase.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything that they would like removed from the consent calendar for discussion or questions? Anybody from the public or administration? We're all good?
I move that we approve the consent calendar as is.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Mayer, supported by Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll move on to Commission on Aging Ad Hoc Committee recommendation for appointments. Anybody from the Ad Hoc Committee want to take this?
Go ahead, you chair.
You're going to ask me to remember? Yeah.
It's on page 151 if you
Yeah,
want
I
to see it.
did actually chair that. And,
You did.
We actually were blessed with an abundance of very well-qualified people who wanted to serve on that board. And it was a tough call. And one of the things that we discovered in the process, it was Bob and Tom and myself, we discovered that the bylaws had all of the appointees serving at the same time, which meant that they would all come off at the same time. So we thought, actually I think Tom's the one who came up with this, but it made sense to us that we would stagger those appointments. So we are asking the commission to stagger these appointments for the first time around. There are 4 appointments, 1 for a year, and we're recommending that would be Ross Childs. 1 2-year, we're recommending Hetty Mulvang, and then 2 for 3 years, and we're recommending
Jan Bailey?
I'm sorry, Jan Bailey.
Jan Bailey.
And
Jim Carruthers.
Jim Carruthers. And so that is our recommendation.
And the director? for
I'm
representation?
sorry, yes, there are two appointees from the COA. One would be Jill Case as an employee, and one is a citizen, a client, and that is?
Doris Beery?
Doris Beery. So that's our recommendation.
Okay.
And there's another suggestion, too, that instead of meeting quarterly, that at the beginning of their formation, that perhaps they meet a little more frequently on a monthly basis. But they can decide what they want to do.
Yep, they can change once the advisory board is officially formed, they can change the bylaws.
Yeah, because we thought quarterly is a little bit of a slow start for something that hasn't been functioning for a while.
I think that was a minimum anyway. You can always meet more often than that. Cindy, do you have any comments or?
No, I was just that I agree. So I've actually already changed the bylaws with the state during appointments, and also initially presenting it that we would meet at least the first 3 months monthly, and then maybe every other month after that. That works, or if we feel like we need to keep it at monthly, then we'll do that. I've already changed the bylaws.
Okay, awesome.
So did you set a date for the first meeting?
May 1st.
May 1st?
Because we've got some change in personnel, and we're trying to get organized. May 1st would be the first Tuesday in May, and follow every month. And we've already got the agenda, and the people can contribute to, and also our calendar.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we had, what was it, 16 plus applicants, something like that?
13.
Was it 13? Okay. So, I mean, it's a good and a bad thing to have is to have to tell some people no, because we had some really qualified candidates, so.
But they're rotating, so there'll be
yes.
opportunities every year
Yeah.
for somebody, for them to try again. Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Gorfulet, supported by Commissioner Johnson. Any other comments?
Were you going to make an appointment from the board?
Yes, it's you.
Oh, open your mouth.
You did an excellent job with this, so.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yes,
thank
you may be the appointee from the commission.
Unless someone else really wants it.
Don't make eye contact with her. Okay. Any other comments, questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, you have your advisory board. Thank you. We will move on to our special orders of business, the Fish Pass. We'll get our technology going. Who do we have here today?
Hi there. Thank you for the opportunity to brief you on the Fish Pass project. As Mike Estes mentioned earlier, we're not here to ask for anything. We're simply here to provide you a project update. My name is Andrew Muir. I'm the Science Director from the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. I'm here with Dr. Dan Zielinski. He's a computational engineer who was hired to support and develop the project, and Dr. Mark Gaydon, who is our Communications Director and Legislative Liaison. So thank you for the opportunity. So the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, who are we? We're formed based on a 1955 treaty between Canada and the United States, and our primary charge was to deal with sea lamprey control in the Great Lakes, and secondly, to maintain healthy, sustainable fisheries. A little bit about sea lamprey. You see them here. Some of you may or may not be familiar with them. They're particularly nasty beasts. They attach to the side of a fish, rasp a hole in the side of them using that tongue and teeth, and draw fluids out of those animals. On average, a single sea lamprey can kill about 40 pounds of fish during its lifespan. They migrate up rivers and streams such as the Boardman to spawn during the spring, and the females can produce many, many, many offspring. So a single female can lay up to 100,000 eggs. So they're very problematic in terms of control. And that's what we do, is attempt to control sea lamprey. And there are two primary means, but one of the primary means is barriers. And we deny access by spawning animals to that upstream habitat. And the Boardman has very good, high-quality spawning habitat for sea lamprey. The second is that we use a chemical lampricide that's quite selective towards killing the larvae of sea lamprey after they settle out and live in those streams in the sediment for their first several years of lives. So control efforts have reduced populations in the Great Lakes from about 90% of historical peak abundance. So what is FishPass and what does that have to do with lamprey? Well, it's an innovative project and a new approach to enhance fish passage and connectivity, because we know that that's good for fishery restoration, to restore those energetic and nutrient links between rivers and their lakes, their outlets, in this case between the Boardman River and Lake Michigan, while removing invasive fishes or non-desirable fishes through controlled sorting. So the idea here is that this is a way to control what moves up and down through the system. What will FishPass do? It'll replace the deteriorating Union Street Dam with an improved barrier featuring a fish sorting channel and a nature-like channel. So the status quo now, once the dams are removed upstream, is that you have Union Street, which effectively only will function now to pass sea lamprey and non-native salmonids. Most native fishes cannot get up the fish ladder there, so essentially the status quo, if we do nothing at Union Street, is an aging barrier that allows sea lamprey and non-native salmonids above. What will it do? Well, it will optimize various sorting technologies and techniques, and I'll show you what some of those might look like, below a secondary barrier to maximize the efficiency of passing desirable fishes and removing invasive fishes. So we'll show you some images of how this might look, but essentially when the gates are up, FishPass will function as a full barrier with selective capacity to all animals. It'll be developed into a living laboratory, so there's a very strong education and outreach component, and it will be able to be converted through the process of optimizing sorting over the course of time into a permanent selective passageway at Union Street. So why the Boardman? It was selected among 12 different sites that were considered throughout Michigan and elsewhere based on a very rigorous decision analysis process, using something like 20 criteria to rank those streams based on need. It represents a solution to fish passage and sea lamprey control at Union Street, and that was something that was sought by the river restoration team. So this is kind of a final piece to a 10 or I think it's even 20-year long effort to restore the Boardman River. Union Street Dam, as I mentioned, is in disrepair, requiring maintenance, and it aligns with the Boardman River restoration timeline. So the time when we were undertaking this decision analysis, looking for a site to implement this project, happened to fall in line with the timeline that the IT had established for addressing the problems at Union Street. So what is FishPass? So if we boil the question down, the question becomes, how do you sort an assortment of things? So we have an assemblage of fish that are moving during spawning times up the Boardman River from out of Grand Traverse Bay. And the question is, how do you sort them out? So we want to sort the bad things from the good things. So we've drawn on this example of the evolution of recycling. And so many of you probably remember back in the day, you would have to manually sort your recyclable materials. So paper into one bin, metal into one bin, glass into another bin. Now, in many places, it's evolved into single-stream recycling. So all of those different materials are commingled into a single bin. It gets taken to a facility like you see here, and then it's run through this series of different technologies to sort those materials based on their properties. So we know that metal, for example, can be attracted by a magnet and pulled off the system. Paper is light, so you can puff air up from the bottom, float it, and then siphon it off. So what they're essentially doing is using different technologies to sort these various materials based on their properties, their size, their weight, what they're composed of. And we're drawing on that to try and sort fish in very similar ways, based on their size, their shape, how they swim, when they're moving through the system. So that's the idea. And just to give you a sense here, this is a video. Hopefully, it is going to work. So on the right-hand side, someone is dumping into that tank a beaker full of alarm cue. This is a cue that's extracted, shown on the left, from decaying lamprey carcasses. So they emit these alarm cues as they die. Many things do this. There are different kinds of chemicals that are emitted, and what it does is it signals other animals biologically that this is danger, there's fear here. So you can see the dramatic response of the sea lamprey when you dump this into the tank. So we can use technologies like this, for example, to push sea lampreys to one side of a channel to sort them, or to push them away from where we want other fish to pass. We also have been developing pheromones where we can attract sea lampreys or other things, and these are naturally occurring biological compounds. They occur in nature. So they're very safe, and they've been approved by EPA. So that's kind of the backdrop in terms of what we're trying to do here, and I will pass it over to my colleague Dan Zielinski to explain to you where we're at in the design process.
All right, thank you. So I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with the site of the Union Street Dam, which is just down the street from here. The existing dam is an aging infrastructure that contains several culverts that go underneath an earthen embankment, and also has a fish ladder that Andrew said is currently, it really can pass lamprey under certain conditions and non-native salmonids. So it's not a really effective barrier for the long term, and is in need of repair. And that brings us to the design that you see in front of you, and this was a culmination of a series of workshops that we held, bringing together a team of over 50 fisheries biologists, managers, and engineers to come up with a design criteria for a in-river research facility that can be maximally adaptive and flexible to incorporate all the different technologies and techniques that Andrew was talking about from being inspired from the recycling industry. So it's something that's very new, and it's a worldwide problem that there has been no solution to. And this is the first opportunity to be able to incorporate multiple technologies, because a lot of these have been developed for individual fish or individual situations and hasn't really ever been incorporated with fish passage and fish, kind of guidance or deterrence technologies. And this is the design that was come up with to be able to facilitate that kind of work. And I'll just point out quickly a couple of the main features that you'll see on this diagram here. On the north side of the river, so the top of the screen, that's the fish sorting channel, which is where a lot of the research will occur and where we can make a lot of those adaptations and changing, looking at the different technologies. Well, we have a nature-like bypass channel on the south side. That's the more sinuous, natural-looking portion of the channel, which is able to facilitate all the flood flows that go through the Boardman River and anything that wouldn't be passed through the fish sorting channel. The other key features here is replacement of a walking path that connects both the north and south shorelines, because the existing embankment has the bike path on top of it. So here we have a supported bridge that connects both sides. There's also numerous walking paths on both the north and south banks. There's an outdoor classroom type area for education and outreach opportunities. There's also incorporation of a kayak slide to facilitate the use of kayakers going up and downstream, as well as outlooks for people to be able to observe the science that's going on at this site and access for fishing in the Nature-like channel and both up and downstream. Here's just another rendering looking upstream towards the headworks that controls the flow, as well as a research building that also has public restrooms available. But taking a closer look at some of those features, I just want to point out, so as Andrew said, one of the main features here is that we have redundancy built in so that we have control over the passage of fish, so we minimize our risk for any unintended releases, and we can have controlled research. And to do that, in the fish sorting channel, we have a redundant water control gate system. So there's actually two sets of gates to manage flows within the fish sorting channel, so they can facilitate what we need to do for the science, but also still maintain an upstream barrier that all species would not be able to pass unless allowed. And then at controlling the flow into the bypass channel is the Labyrinth spillway, which was selected for a couple reasons. One is it's very hydraulically efficient, so it has the same kind of discharge capacity as a straight spillway would that's almost 3 times as long. And it accomplishes that by that zigzag pattern you see on the screen here. And the other reason is it's a very safe design because it doesn't create the dangerous hydraulics immediately downstream that are typically associated with other low-head barriers that are really dangerous to kayakers or if you have a person trying to swim anywhere near this. So it doesn't allow for those conditions to form. So it's very safe from that standpoint. And then looking at the downstream end, you can see that there's a distinct channel between the bypass channel and the fish sorting channel. We've incorporated rain gardens to manage a lot of the stormwater runoff near the site, as well as abundant overlooks and a seating in the round for group gatherings for educational opportunities. And this is just another overview of the sample rendering showing the approximate placement of the fish sorting channel and bypass channel. To come up with this design, in addition to just the in-stream structures, but a lot of the landscaping and park features, we held an open house in this building back in October, where we gauged a lot of input from the public on features and components that they deemed desirable or undesirable at this site. And this is an example of just a small snippet of those options that we gave the public to weigh in on, as well as gauge their interest via surveys. And we incorporated that into the design that I showed you on the previous slides. Overall, the project timeline is set that by the end of this year, we hope to have a 100% design of the site completed. Right now, we're at the 30% design and working towards a 65 and 100%. With the hopes that construction can start somewhere in 2019 or 2020 and completed within a 2-year construction phase. And then it moves on to the research optimization phase, where we look at those different technologies and what is the optimal configuration that works for the Boardman, but also being able to export this to other rivers and tributaries throughout the Great Lakes. And so following that open house, we presented the design to the City Planning Commission, which they found that the fish pass was consistent by unanimous vote with the city master plan, and then was later adopted by the Traverse City Commission in February. And in total, because of its location right in the heart of Traverse City, we wanted to make sure that it meets all the standards and classifications for this site, and also just reiterate that a healthy river means a healthy and vibrant city, and we try to incorporate that into design as best as possible.
So just one slide to summarize. I think we provided to you a draft statement of support for Fish Pass. We're looking to gather support for the project in general because we're entering the phase where we're trying to shore up the final bits of funding for it. And so I just wanted to reiterate here that we have both support from Canada and the United States through a Great Lakes Fishery Commission resolution for the project. The City of Traverse City through the first initial resolution they created, and then through the one more recently that found the project in line with the city master plan. There's also been very strong support by the implementation team, of course, as they've been helping kind of align this with the last phase of the river restoration project. And then the member agencies and institutions of the Fish Pass Advisory Board. You have in your packet some information on the governance for the project and the advisory board. We omitted it here just for time. And so those agencies are in support of the project. And so once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to brief you, and hopefully we have some time for discussion and questions.
I have one.
Okay. Yes, Cheryl.
How much is this going to cost?
The overall, right now we're in the process of finalizing that budget. We just got cost estimates based on the 30% design, so that's obviously going to change. I think we're at about 22 million is sort of the upper end. That includes all of the contingencies associated with the project as well. So that'll be refined over the coming months as we get to the 100% design.
And the local contribution is how much?
We don't have any local contributions as of yet. The funding to date that we have secured is from the GLRI funding. So we've got on the books $12 million towards the construction the in-stream construction for that, and we've been working with several other entities for support funding. Michigan is supportive and did put in a request for some funding last year. It didn't make it into the governor's budget, but we're working on that again this year.
Is there an expectation of local funding?
We've just met yesterday with the city, and we're working on some of that. There are several local funding agencies, foundations. We're also working to make connections with some of the bigger businesses in town, and so we're hoping to offset some of those costs through those sources.
Okay, I just have one more question, if I might.
That's fine.
I'm looking at the Fish Pass Advisory Board, which is on page 69 of your packet, if you're following along. We're not listed, so I'm curious why that is.
This is the first time we've briefed you on this project, so if there's interest there, we can certainly consider that.
Well, I'm not, and with all due respect, we're not part of the board. We're not giving you any money. We haven't been a part of the conversation.
Yep.
I'm just trying to figure out why we're here. Do you know the answer to that?
They're asking for our support.
Okay, but it's a little late in the day, isn't it? I mean,
Well-
it sounds like you've been doing
It's a non-binding, there's no financial binding for, it's just,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's not going to be any request for county dollars here. It's not the county's dam. This is the city's project. It's important that this comes to the county board because it is part of the larger Boardman Dam's removal project. So we are a partner with the city, with other entities in that overall project. And so that's why this has come to you.
Yeah, and there's a long history of this project and support through this commission, and so we felt obligated to bring this commission up to speed now that we're starting to actually design this, so.
Ron?
There is a local coalition to protect the Boardman River brook trout. They would be an ideal entity to have on that advisory board. And also, is there, when the steelhead are released, is there any plans on having a barrier upstream further so that it will protect the brook trout for the people that do enjoy
Sure,
fly
yeah.
fishing?
Two things there. Yeah, in terms of the advisory board, right now the way it's structured is the primary project partners. None of the sort of outside NGO groups are involved there, but we are reaching out and making connections with those groups. We're hosting at the end of May an angler workshop to have not just the Brook Trout Coalition folks, but all of the local angler groups and sports groups to contribute to the project design. We've done that through the whole process with local stakeholders and met with them. The second question, you made a comment that when steelhead are released, there is no plan for steelhead release right now. The position, we have very little to do with the decisions about what animals get passed in this project. That's a responsibility of the Michigan DNR. Our convention doesn't give us management authority. So there is a process in place that the Michigan DNR is leading to have discussions about what gets passed. They have, as far as I understand, I'm not going to speak for them, they have committed to not passing anything until such time as this facility is built, and we've undertaken the process to develop appropriate selective procedures. So nothing will get passed until such time as those decisions and discussions have been made. But I don't want to speak for the DNR again, so that's my understanding.
Would you contact these folks? If
I already
give you this
have.
card? You already have? You know
already
about
have.
them?
They're going to
Okay.
be sitting on the panel at our angler workshop at the end of the month.
Okay, very
I
good.
spoke with Mike last week, and he was happy to talk to us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bob?
yeah, I mean, this could have potential impacts all across the Great Lakes. Have you looked at other states to help contribute to this? Because the research capability of this, could leave a large footprint.
Absolutely. It's a very good question. Yeah, in fact, it's a global problem, the issue of dealing with connectivity and invasive species. There's massive movements out on both coasts, actually on all coasts, to restore connectivity, and it's always viewed as good. Well, there are lots of unintended consequences associated with those barrier removals, and that's what we're trying to address. So you're right, and that's one of the primary project objectives, is to develop this in such a way that the technology, the approach is exportable. We know that each river system is going to be different based on size, the hydrology, the scale, the scope. The intent here is that the approach will be exportable And in terms of the funding, yes, we're looking very broadly. Mark, maybe you could say a little bit about some of those outside entities we're thinking with respect to funding the project, including Canada.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Mark Aiden. As Andrew introduced me, the Communications and Legislative Liaison for the Fishery Commission.
Boy, that's a mouthful.
It's on a business card on 2 lines, so there we go. Part of the reason why we focused first and foremost on the GLRI, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, is that is a basin-wide national funding, and so we do get support from around the Great Lakes Basin in that regard. That said, part of my area of expertise is in federal funding, so we'll look to various possibilities for federal contributions to it, say it'd be EPA dollars or even USDA dollars and conservation grants. We'll be looking to foundations that have a bigger scope than just the Traverse City in addition to this region, and as Andrew said, the state and so on. What I'd really like to see at the end of the day as well is more international support, because as Andrew said, there is considerable interest from around the world. This will solve one of the biggest fishery management challenges of our time, and we've gotten global interest in that area. We'll start with Canada and maybe work from there.
Okay.
Tom?
Since I think the first slide or second slide said removal of the Union Street Dam. Are you removing the whole structure?
Yeah, so the design plans for removal of the entire existing structure.
Okay.
And the construction phasing for it is that it would be done in stages so that we can make use of the capacity of the existing dam while the new one gets built.
So the new barrier will be closer to Cass Street then than it is now?
Yeah, it'll be shifted upstream by about 150 feet.
Okay, it's kind of hard to tell the measurement from the picture. Will the level of the water that's being held now by the Union Street Dam be dropped down at that point?
There's no anticipation that we'd need to reduce the water level for the construction, and the final structure will actually benefit the upstream water level because, again, with that longer spillway capacity, or larger spillway capacity, you'll have much less fluctuations upstream, and it also provides a lot more flood protection than the existing structure.
So it could or may be dropped, though, just because of where the new barrier will be?
No, there's no anticipation of changing the upstream water levels.
It's the same level?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm also getting mail, just as Commissioner Klaus is, there are brook trout fishermen who are concerned about the entry of the steelhead because they think that it's better not to include them. So I'm glad that that's being addressed, publicly. I think we need to bring it up every time the Fish Pass comes up, I think. Even though it's not part of what you're doing, I understand that. But I just feel like it has to be brought up because of the amount of emails and messages I've been receiving, that there's definitely a concern to protect the brook trout mostly.
Okay. Something else?
May I just add that
Yes.
Michigan DNR will be at that workshop that we're hosting, so we fully intend that we'll address that issue at that workshop because it certainly will come up.
When is that workshop date?
We're going to send out information next week to all the angler groups, but the date is going to be the 30th of May in the evening from 7 to 11, I guess we have it booked. At the Haggerty Center, the 30th, that's where it will be. And then we're going to follow it up on the second night, the 31st, with a focus group meeting with the leadership of each of those angler groups represented at the focus group. And that group then will meet with the Fish Pass team and hammer out all of the issues that are identified in the bigger workshop.
So is this open to the general public if they're interested?
It will be open. Our focus is on the angler groups because we have not yet fully engaged those groups one-on-one to hear their concerns, but it will be open to the general public, yes.
Okay. Did anybody in the audience save their public comment for this particular topic? No? Okay. We'll bring it back to the board. There is in our packet a statement of support for the Fish Pass. So I would ask at this point if we have a motion in support.
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Go ahead.
We need little buzzers. Moved by Commissioner Lathrop, supported by Commissioner Klaus. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will have a statement of support that I will sign and you will get. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to, we did not have any items removed from the consent calendar. We can move on to Grand Traverse Conservation District millage request. And we have someone coming up on their behalf? Okay. No, he's fine.
Hi, I'm Andy Blodgett. I am the chair of the Grand Traverse Conservation District. You've heard the public comments we submitted in the packet. The reason the Conservation District needs a millage is we have a systemic operational deficiency that we cannot fix, and the reason we can't fix it is we are an unfunded governmental agency. We have an unbalanced budget. So right now, our breakdown for our budget is about 69% of our budget is from grants, 26% is earned income from contracts that we do for parklands, including the county, the small store we have in the nature center, the camp programs we do, seedling and plant sales, 2% from the county, which I'll talk about later, and only 3% from donations. That's very unbalanced, and that puts us at risk. You heard Steve Largent talk. Every September that we're around, our executive director, at the end of our fiscal year, has to sit down with one of our employees and say, you may not be here next year, meaning next month, because of the grant. We just haven't heard approval from the state or the federal government, whoever it is. You might not have a job in a couple weeks. You can't plan because of that. These employees can't stick around because of that. This doesn't allow for predictable growth planning, and an important part of it is we do not have going forward the operational infrastructure to keep processing all these grants. We have about 34 different grants that we manage. These bring in over $900,000 of funding, mainly to Grand Traverse County. Some are somewhat regional. That is fantastic. You heard, we do a lot of good work, and we do a lot of work, and I'm so proud. One reason I became involved in this is boots on the ground kind of work. We are not a think group or anything like that, or an advocacy group. These are boots on the ground, taking care of trails, taking care of the Boardman River, helping farmers through our voluntary compliance program, doing a lot of education. We are doing stuff, and that is a great benefit to the county. But managing those 10 contracts and 30-some grants takes a lot of work, and we just have been unable to do that. For years that I've been on the board, the attempt was to try to fix this problem ourselves. In many ways, as an unfunded governmental entity, we end up operating essentially like a nonprofit. And by that I mean, you'd like to say we'd like more donations, more stable funding sources going forward, and that would allow us to plan, that would allow us to serve all these grants. The problem is we just can't do that. We've tried really hard, and it's just not working. And there are a few reasons for that. First of all, there are some folks and agencies, sorry, I shouldn't say agencies, other entities, foundations, which will simply not give to a governmental entity. We've gone down the road because they thought we were a nonprofit, and all of a sudden we get to the end and they say, oh, sorry, our bylaws, we can't give to you. Another problem with this source of funding is that we just cannot plan. We also have a lot of restrictions with this, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it just is very constricting when almost the entire budget for a given employee is slotted in a certain area. It does not involve or does not give us the capability to have organizational flexibility. One final thing on the budget before I move on. Our annual budget is about $1.4 million. The management of that takes a lot of time, especially, you should note, a large portion of that, or I shouldn't say large, a significant portion of that is a pass-through. In other words, we will be the leader to go get a grant. The money will come in, and we are the holding tank that distributes it to other organizations around. Again, that's entirely management, and many of those grants do not provide any funds to manage that. If it's $5,000, $10,000, $100,000, that is only to go for the salaries, for instance, of the workers who are doing the work. Well, that doesn't pay our insurance, it doesn't pay our light bills, it doesn't pay the operational control. It doesn't pay accounting to make sure, because you all know grants, it's a lot of reporting requirements. We don't have that money to keep doing that. And so, again, like I said, we've really tried to fix it, and I personally have come to the conclusion we try a lot of different things, a lot of ideas, and the problem is those are ideas that a nonprofit would be doing, not that a governmental agency should be doing, and we should be funded like a governmental agency, and that's why we want to go to the people and say we need a tax base. Let me tell you very briefly, you heard a lot about these, so I'll be very brief, looking at the 4 areas in which we operate. Let me give you some background. A lot of conservation districts are very small. Every county has one by statute. In many counties, especially the rural counties, all you would have is a MEEP technician. MEEP is a program run by the Department of Ag. It's voluntary compliance for farms. They can enroll in the program, and you see the nice white and green signs as you travel through the country. They are MEEP verified. It's a great program. Department of Ag pays that, but it does not, I should say many conservation districts, that is the only real viable program. Maybe they have a forester, maybe they have a part-time director, but that is it. You heard, so I won't belabor the point, everything we do, $900,000 in conservation and education grant dollars. We've got a beautiful nature center. We manage 3,000 acres in our Parkland Conservation Management contracts. We've been a long-time protector of the Boardman River. We do a lot more than most conservation districts. So these 4 areas, just from a budget sense, we have contracts to maintain parks and trails. Again, 3,000 acres. It's with the county, it's with the city, and it's with the Rec Authority. And those contracts generally pay for the workers, but they do not provide funding for long-term vision, long-term planning, or equipment. We just scrimped and saved and spent months and months as a board trying to come up with $16,000 to buy a well-used truck to service this. I think we should be, with the resources we have around here, we should be innovative leaders in the area of trails and getting people on trails and getting them to use it. We don't have the dollars to do that. We are fulfilling our contracts with the county and others, but there are just no funds for that. Camps education, our director has a background in camps. We've seen a 136% increase in attendance at our summer camps. That is great, but the increase means more bodies because it's state regulated. So for 3 months of the year, we draw about even with all those camps. For the other 9 months, we operate on a shortfall. Our funding in that area has gone down significantly through a local grant organization was unable to keep funding that. We need reliable money for that. I've described the MEEP program from a budgeting standpoint. That one I'll use as very illustrative of our need for the millage. The state gives us a certain pot of money to pay MEEP technicians. So we hire them and we give them a salary and benefits package. The problem is that money stays the same the next year. Of course, you know, health insurance money goes up. So we come to them each year and say, sorry, it looks like you're going to be taking home less. It's one of the few jobs where we make less and less each year unless we can scrimp together some other funding because the health costs go up. Again, these grants just don't give operational money to sustain something like we would like to have, programs for our employees. Boardman River, there is no consistent sustainable funding for the Boardman River. That's what most people know us for. That's what we're great at, frankly. We have a trust fund that gives us about $13,000 a year. We scrape together with other fundraisers and things like that. We do our best, but you heard from Steve. Most other people would have been gone 2 decades ago. He's stuck in there, but we need a reliable source for the river. I think you need to know essentially what would the money be used for. It would be almost all operational. If we've run the numbers right, and I should pause here, your administration has been very helpful, each one of these folks and Christine. They've done their job. They've not gone over the line by any means, but it's a confusing process, and they've been very helpful. As far as we can tell, the millage would be about $500,000. The DDA has deductions in there. We have several DDAs, and we get down shortly under $400,000. What we'd be left with, it would be about 20% of our budget at that rate. That would allow us to do management of the other 80%. We're a very frugal organization, probably a bit too frugal. We would use this for a lot of deferred maintenance and expenses, equipment funds, some vehicles, some other trail equipment. Capital fund is a real need. We have a 10-year-old high-traffic building starting to show its age. We don't have funds for that. Keep a mental bookmark there. That's important to you. We have a nature center which has some old exhibits which we got, to my understanding, from the zoo at one point. We need to refurbish that. We would love to charge a minimal amount, not to county residents, but we want to make it a area of high traffic, high learning. We don't have the capital for that. We also, frankly, need an emergency resource. A lot of our operational funding comes through a series of grants that, if you work way back up, eventually come from the EPA. You all heard last fall threats from the federal administration to just put a big red X through the EPA. If that happens, our doors are shut, period. Or at best, we go back to maybe the 2 MEP technicians. We need some sort of way to keep doing some operations if those grants all fall through. We also have a very big problem with the grant matching capability. A lot of the grant money that comes in or would be available says that the recipient must match it, either in cash or sometimes in-kind work by employees doing work. We have a hard time doing that. We got a stormwater management grant, $135,000. We received this, and then we didn't have the 10%, $13,500 had to come from our budget. We just couldn't do it. Had to turn that money away. We also have a problem because all of our employees are very restricted grant funding. We can't use an employee whose funding source is ultimately the federal government to do an in-kind match of another federal government grant. And this all trickles back in a way, so we cannot use them as an in-kind match. Having a millage fund, having employees would allow us to do that and bring in more money. And I do need to say, because if you go to our website, other things, we do some programs outside the county. That's because the Department of Ag organizes some of these programs that way. I do want to assure this commission and anyone listening that the millage money, if successful, would be in this county. We are good at that, ironically, because of the grants. We have to track and code all of our timesheets by location, so we know where the dollars go. We will keep them in this county. Very quickly, some commission-specific factors, maybe not for the general public, but I think that the commission needs to know. We have run the idea of a millage by the Parks and Rec Commission, so they are fully aware of it. They were generally supportive. They've invited us to a couple millage meetings. I don't know if you were going to speak or not. She can give her thoughts on that. Currently, the Grand Traverse County budget gives us $27,000 a year. It has been as high as $40,000 in the past. With the budget woes I don't need to remind you of, it's very tenuous. I understand that. I have no illusions that we'd still be getting that money if a millage passes, so that is a consideration for your budget. We also service over 500 acres of county land. And that is $46,000 in contracts. Like I mentioned before, we're doing that job. We're doing okay. I think we could be doing a lot better if we had some more resources from a millage and equipment to allow us to plan and sit down with Parks and Rec and others and say, okay, we have basic trails. Let's do something better than that. Really excited about that. And you need to know, if you don't, that Grand Traverse County is the landlord for the Grand Traverse Conservation District Nature Center. We have a lease. The county owns the NER, the Nature Education Reserve. We lease about an acre of that. Our best guess at the funds needed to run that facility each year are $76,000. Worst case scenario, if we lose a lot of funding, we don't have the money to take care of that building, frankly. And just keeping lights on, bathrooms running, all that stuff. That is a warning sign, frankly, to the county commission to be taken into consideration. In closing, unless you have any questions, first, thanks. No matter what happens, the county's been a funding source, a contractual partner, a collaborator with us for many decades, and a lot of vision of a lot of people, so thank you for that. We have the goodwill of the community. You heard some of the letters read. We have a lot of partners, most of whom are waiting on the decision tonight before announcing their support. But we will have a lot of partners in the community who are well-known, who will be behind this millage. I do expect success. Like I said, we're the boots on the ground. I think we have the goodwill of the community. We have thousands of hours of volunteers every year, which is great because I think if we get some more funding, there are things we can do that frankly the county can't. The county doesn't have thousands of hours of volunteers every year, so I think we play a great role for that. We will be above board. We understand district resources can't be used on a millage campaign. We will abide by the rules. Our board is committed to this. We have been talking about this for years. Like I said, we've been trying to solve this in many different ways. We've come to the conclusion that this is the best way, this is the most appropriate way as a governmental entity, and the board is behind this. We do expect it to be successful, and we are asking you to give Grand Traverse County voters the opportunity to decide if they want the Conservation District to continue as it has been operating and doing the great work that we are doing.
Tom?
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Grand Traverse Conservation District's resolution to put a millage on the ballot, but I also have a couple of questions.
Let's take your motion and see if we get a second, and then we'll open up for discussion.
Support.
So moved by Commissioner Mayer, supported by Commissioner Johnson. What are your questions?
Okay, couple questions. One would be, how many years do you want this millage to exist for?
The request is for 10 years.
Okay. I didn't see that.
It's in there.
It's in the resolution.
Which paragraph in the resolution?
Let's see.
I read it somewhere in there.
It's on page 83 in the millage language.
But it's not on 84, what the resolution is?
No.
No, but it's
Okay.
in the millage language.
It's in the
itself.
millage language for a period of 10 years.
I don't know, that might be kind
Resolution-
of hard to find later.
Well, the
So-
resolution approves
Oh.
the millage language, so.
Okay. All right, I'm just concerned that people might not be able to connect to that, like a year from now or something. And that it could be in the resolution, I would think. You know, how many years you want the millage to be for?
It needs to be.
It's there.
In the resolution, in the
Yeah,
resolution
In the
itself?
resolution? I mean, certainly you can add it in the resolution, but it's in the,
It's in the millage language,
Okay.
it's in the
All right.
ballot language.
No, that's fine.
Because all we're voting on is to put it on the ballot, not exactly the terms.
Okay. I just
Yeah,
thought.
we are.
I
Well-
thought it might be good to put it there. That's
Okay.
my suggestion.
Okay.
The other question is, as elected officials, maybe Chris could answer this question. What are we able to do for a millage is there any restriction on our activity to be involved in a millage politically?
Yeah, so under the Campaign Finance Act, you can't use public dollars to either campaign for or against a millage. Now, you as a private citizen, you can do that as long as you're not using your authority, your position as county commissioner, and you're not using county resources.
Okay, but as an individual, you can.
Individually, you can, absolutely.
But you can't obligate the county
Or use county resources.
or use county resources. Okay. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Dan and then Cheryl.
I wonder why we're not putting this on the November ballot. The reason I'm interested in that is the amount of voters that are involved in making this decision will be much bigger. We have like 20% of voters in August 7th and 60 to 70% in November, so we get a much better idea of what the public really felt.
So what was your reason for wanting it in August as opposed to November?
Sure, two reasons. The first is budget reasons. As I understand the property tax system, if we get approved in August, it is for the tax dollars of this year. So we essentially get the money a year sooner. And in projecting ahead to the expiration and renewal, if we wait another year, we might have a funding gap of a year if I've got the timing down right. So that was our concern, to get the money sooner, consistent with our request, and to not have a gap later. The second part is also that if I understand the timing right again. If we are unsuccessful in August, we have a short window of time to be in front of this commission and ask again to go in November and get on the ballot. And there is a local conservation district which failed by about 6 votes in August and was successful in November. We've been talking with all the local ones, actually a statewide group, on their strategies. So while I would hope to not have to do 2, that was our thinking in requesting for the August ballot.
Okay, Cheryl?
I would tell you that my hesitation is that this sort of came out of nowhere. I mean, we've heard I've heard nothing from you. I've been on the commission for a year and a half, and then I hear from you, and it's wanting a millage request. We're talking about possibly having a millage request for animal control on the August ballot, and we've spent about a year and a half looking at animal control and having an ad hoc committee that was made up of, people from across the community and people within the organization and outside of the organization. Spent about a year and a half gathering a lot of information and trying to wrap our arms around, is this the way to go or not? Ultimately, yes, we have to put it to the voters to decide whether it's the way to go or not. But, I feel like the timing is really uncomfortable for me. I think of like Parks and Rec, Tart Trails, the Tribe, those all seem like natural partners to me that ought to be part of, finding a solution. And maybe you've already, tried to get Parks and Rec or the Tart Trails or the Tribe to help you with, these issues that you have. But I just wonder if there wasn't a committee that was formed that could gather more information like we've been doing for the last year and a half on animal control, that we might have a better idea of, what the ultimate solutions are, because just putting, giving somebody money isn't going to necessarily, resolve the issues. I mean, I don't know really what the vision is. You've kind of thrown out a few ideas, but it just doesn't feel fully formed. So I'm just concerned about the timing. It's like it's April and you want to do this in August, and I mean, I'm sure you can put together a campaign. It sounds like, you had pretty good success in getting a campaign here tonight of people to speak on behalf of it. But it just feels like there's some groundwork that needs to be done that hasn't been done.
We have done our groundwork. It has not been through this committee. We've worked with Parks and Rec. Again, we're not a county subdivision, we're a state subdivision, so we're separate. By statute, we do need to come ask the county for permission. I get all that, but we have worked extensively with Parks and Rec. We've talked about joint ideas. We have worked extensively with the Conservancy. They know about our funding situation. We've worked a lot with them. We've worked extensively with TART. We have had all those players in the room to talk about the situation. I do feel like we have done our homework.
Yeah. Please understand, I'm not saying that you haven't. We just don't know about it. The only thing we know is that you're here today saying, give us permission, to have a millage. And it's like, okay, how many millages are we going to have? Does multiple millages diminish the opportunity for other millages? I don't know the answer to that. Only the voters do. But I was just sharing my concerns.
Sure. And one other thing to throw in the pot of the stew of that decision is we are only allowed to go for a millage every other year. And so in all those discussions that we have been having, and that's by state law, all those discussions we've been having, events in the last year with our funding have become much more critical, and it's now we're 2 years, and frankly I don't think we'll be the same size in 2 years. And so I will confess there are times it feels very rushed, but on the other hand, I sit back and think we've been talking with our partners and supporters about the funding problem for well over 2 years. So I understand your concern and I appreciate that, but I do think the time is right now.
Ron, and then Bob.
You'd mentioned you want to put it on a millage in August so that if it failed, you could be on in November. If it went on in August, would you be opposed to having it back on in November to see if it failed then? I mean, just pick November when most of the people are coming to the polls and let the majority of the people decide, you know. It'd be nice to go back to the voters a second time if you lose, but if you win, you know, if you're successful, you're happy.
Yeah, this is Marcia Clark, our executive director. I will chime in quickly. The timing of the property tax is really important to us, to just know that we have this and to be able to get those dollars. Maybe we disagree. I've heard strategies go for in August, go for it other times. It's not an underhanded thing. It's an open election. I understand, naturally, most people don't come out. The numbers are lower, but, you know, it is an open election. And, yeah, if I need 2 bites of the apple, I would like 2 bites of the apple. I'm only thinking for our organization, but that's the way we've been processing it. But, again, it's mainly the funding timing mechanism as well as county budget timing, and our fiscal year is October. So,
and this would be a question for, I don't know, administration, Dean. If it passed if they were successful in August, would there be any difference between August or November for them receiving funds from the tax revenue?
I'm going to go a slightly different direction than answering that question, but it could be on the November ballot. If it was approved on the November ballot, it could be levied on the December tax bills for 2019. So,
correct.
Yeah, okay. There would be time.
You mean for 18?
No, if it's on the ballot this November and it's approved, it could be on the tax bills that are generated in December for 2019.
Oh, okay. Understood.
Yes.
Okay.
And it wouldn't generate any sooner than that if it was on August.
No, it would. This is your calendar year, your state. It would still be available though. Well, that might be. Your fiscal year starts October 1st. Okay, that's the issue.
And that's my problem. We've talked with Kalkaska, who had a problem, who had to wait a year for the money. And by the way, when you have to wait the year for the money, you don't tack another year at the end. Right. Instead of 10 years, it's 9. And right. I've gone around and done my best to figure that timing out, and we heard that some places just can't turn it around fast enough on the November election, and some with the budget timing can't get it on their state budget. So that's my concern, and I'm not going to tell you I know exactly how it works, but that's what we've heard from the other conservation districts.
Bob?
Yeah, I mean, one of the concerns I've had, and I had with the animal millage, is the fact that, you know, more and more millages, most people I hear from are just saying enough with millages. To me, I mean, I look at what you have, and just about every surrounding county has approved a millage to support their local agency such as this. You know, the area we live in, you know, we're known for the beauty of the areas, the trails, everything else. And if left to just individuals, a lot of that isn't going to get done. You know, you can think that people have the best interest, but you look at the people when they do the bike rides and everything, the places are left in a mess, and then they have to have people come in and clean and that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm really torn, just like I am with the animal millage, on, you know, I was elected to try to make these tough decisions, but should I let it go to the voters and let the voters decide? The campaign, and then I feel confident we have smart enough voters here that they can discern on these millages whether they agree with it or not, and if the campaign has enough information. One of the big issues I have is 10 years. I really am concerned about a 10-year millage. I would love to see it at 6, personally. I think that would just work into it. I know everybody would like to have 10 years of certainty. I can guarantee the state funding is probably not ever going to increase. You know, I'm really torn. Really.
I have one comment, and maybe this is for Chris. The ballot language says up to and including 0.1 mil. So it would not have to be 0.1 mil every time.
It could be. whether the conservation district, whether they feel like they're gonna need the entire amount. I mean, hearing from them, it sounds like they will, but I think they could levy less.
And what about the years? Do we have the authority to alter the ask?
You know, I'll defer to Andrew, but I did look at the law to see what steps were necessary to get this on the ballot. And I don't remember reading anywhere in the law that said it had to be for 10 years.
It can be up to 20 years is what I remember the statute reading.
Sure, but it could be 6 years.
It could be anything shorter than 20, yes.
So I guess the question is, can it be less than 10 years?
The answer is yes.
I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Can you be happy with less than 10 years?
I don't want less than 10 years.
I appreciate that, but if you had to negotiate, would you be happy with less than 10 years?
Happy? No. Would I live with it? If you tell me I have to, I think we would probably still go with it. The 10 years is based on talking with conservation districts around the state who have been successful, and all of them said, we've received this support, and just the hassle of going for a renewal, we wished we had asked for longer. And that was what we heard, and that was what we're basing our strategy upon.
Dan?
Dean, I'm kind of confused about if we put this on the August ballot and it passes, think about that scenario. Or we put it on the November ballot and it passes. Do they get the money the same time, either way?
Well, I believe the answer would be yes. Your plan is to have this for your fiscal year that starts October 1st, 2019?
As I understood it, it would be available starting January 1st, 2019. And the reason that we chose to put it on the August ballot, excuse me, was because our fiscal year ends September 30th. And if we don't find out until November, we could actually lose staff people because I would have to let them go when the grants end September 30th if they're not renewed.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm a little confused with the fiscal year, how you could have it start sooner, but you guys have done that research, we haven't, so.
That's one of the things that, even the animal control, I've kind of evolved on this. I've been against, raising taxes. I feel much better about it if it would be in November, where most of the voters have a chance at a crack at it. Being conservative as I am, make me feel better to see it on the November ballot, so that 70% of the people have a chance to weigh in on it.
Bob?
You know, that sounds good, but my thought is if it really matters to you, you're going to get out there and vote, whether it's August or November. If it's really important, if you don't like that millage, if it's in August, you're going to go there. Like I said, I guess I would love to see 6 years to start, and then if you renew again, go for 10 is where my comfort level would be at. I don't have any concerns other than that. For me, it's just a 6-year millage. I think might sell better to start with. The COA, I think it's 6 years. And
Veterans was 5?
Veterans was 5 because of the cycles. You try to get it even with the cycles. So I guess that would be one of my suggestions.
We'll go with Ron, and then I'm going to open it up to the public if anybody saved their comment.
I could be supportive of it in November, but not on the August election.
Okay, so we have some supportive of
10 years?
6 or 10 or
for 6 years.
Okay. All right. We're going to open it up to anyone who saved their comments for this time. Sarah, do you need to tell me something?
I have a comment.
Oh,
May I make one more remark?
Yes, ma'am.
And that is, would you consider a deal of 8 so we wouldn't be in a presidential election? Because conservation millages don't usually pass during presidential elections as well as they do during midterms. Just a thought.
Fair enough. Okay, Sarah has a comment, and then we're going to go with Ms. Erickson.
My only comment regarding ballot proposals on August or November is we've heard through the state that there is a potential of anywhere between 2 to 4 state proposals on the November election. Just throwing that out there to keep in consideration of the number of proposals on a ballot.
Yeah.
Well, and, I mean, I understand what you're saying about more voters, but, I mean, if we're going to support them putting a ballot, or a ballot millage on their proposal, I think we need to do it in August just for their financial budget. Because, I mean, just imagine us scrambling all this at the last minute, trying to readjust a budget if we came into a big pot of money. I mean, it'd be a good thing to have, but to me, it would make more sense, again, to do it in August for their budget considerations, because they do October, they are the state, so it's October. Like I said, if it's important to you, you're going to get out and vote. I really, think so. But.
Okay. Chris?
Hello again, Commissioners. Chris Erickson, Director of County Parks and Recreation, and I'm here as the Director of County Parks. I will give you just a little bit of the history about Parks and Recreation Commission and Department's involvement in discussions with the Conservation District about where to go with this millage. Last year, at the end of the year, the Parks and Recreation Commission appointed an ad hoc committee called the Future of Parks and Recreation, or the Future of County Parks and Recreation. That ad hoc committee started meeting in March, and we've met twice. And we had some of the right people there, Harry Burkholder, folks from LEA to help us. Civil Counsel Chris Forsyth was there, Deputy Civil Counsel. And what we're discussing are options to make, as you know, Parks and Recreation, our department, more self-sufficient. Also, to look for ways to do that, potentially through, we're talking about a potential millage. We're talking about forming an authority with other Parks and Rec entities. Looking at our options, and the charge of this ad hoc committee is to come back with a recommendation, I would say in early summer, probably June or July, to the full Parks Board about what direction, what our options are, what would be some good options to pursue. And back last year, I believe it was in September, the Conservation District invited me to one of their board meetings to discuss where we were at with looking at those options and the potential of joining forces. And the Conservation District was at the table with us during our ad hoc committee meetings, which could have started earlier, but we didn't have our full slate of officers to start the meetings till March. So the time has not been on our side, but they were at the table both times, and it ultimately was decided that we would have to wait too long for them to do what they need to do now. We have to vet this even more, come back with our recommendation, really tell the story of Parks and Rec, and decide whether we would do that this year or next year. I think it's the consensus of the ad hoc committee that we wouldn't be able to pull this off this year. But I'm not positive yet, and I can't speak for ultimately what the recommendation will be. So I guess what I'd ask you to consider tonight is that, we have had conversations. They have talked to the other Parks and Rec entities. This has been something that's been evolving, but we haven't come to you to update you because their decision had to be made quickly once they figured out they weren't able to join forces with us. But I want you to consider from our department perspective, I can't speak on behalf of my commission because the full commission has not considered this, but they manage 520 acres of parkland for us at the Natural Education Reserve. There are 7 trailheads, there are many bridges and boardwalks, trails, stairs, things like that. The Conservation District takes care of that for us. They probably receive even more visitors, I think, sometimes than the Civic Center. And we get between 700 and 1 million anecdotally, and I say that probably at every other meeting here, because that's what an important property it is. I just want you to consider, please, what our world would be like if they were gone, because it could truly affect the services that we provide. We would have to take over managing that property. I don't know what that would look like if we'd sub it out to a private entity. I'm not sure, we'd be able to have the manpower to apply for the grants for the maintenance and upkeep of that park. I don't know if we could take over the chore of restoring the bottomlands and provide the conservation-minded management that they bring through their scientific expertise to really do a good job of managing that property. Excuse me, we wouldn't be able to provide the programming as things stand right now, and they have a huge programming component there that serves a great segment of our society, or of our county, I mean. And we wouldn't be able to, I don't think we have the volunteer base that they have to bring in people to plant the native plants and trees, the thousands of them that they plant each year to keep the food chain from being disrupted, to keep things going there. And some of those are requirements with our MDNR grant funding agreements to keep that, those properties or that parkland the way it is, to keep from disrupting the food chain, to keep the native plants and trees there. So I think this would be a loss to the county, or we would have to scramble to figure it out. I don't know that we could let it go back to its natural state, because we already know there would be hazards there as it becomes natural again, and that would be a liability on our part. And this also would be a huge loss to the rest of the community because of the other 2,500 acres that they take care of. And the NER is nearly half of the 1,400 acres that the county already owns. So I just would ask you to consider those types of things, this coming back to us next year. And another thing that motivated them this year, I think, to come to us, or last year, is because they were seeing the writing on the wall with federal and state programs and them being unfunded. They didn't realize it would happen so abruptly, but it's already started. So that's all I have to say. I appreciate you listening and, again, your consideration.
Thank you. So let me take it out to the public. Is it anybody who has not spoken on this yet? You only get one shot on each topic. If there's anybody out there who hasn't spoken on this yet that would like to? Yes, sir.
I'm Joe Breach. I live at 3404 Fish Creek Road. Wasn't born here. I came to Traverse City the first time in 1963. I started coming a lot more frequently in the 70s, the early 70s when I was in college, and I moved here in 95. And the reason I did is because of the resources. It's the beauty of the land, it's the color of the water, it was the snow. I never used to come in the summer because I hate crowds, so I'm not really happy during Cherry Festival. But I live in the Brownbridge Quiet area. To be upfront about things, I live right around the corner from Steve Largent. I go by the Brownbridge, or the Boardman River, I cross it about 5 times every time I come into town. And it's a gorgeous resource that's basically cared for by the Conservation District. Every time I go on Cass Road, now that the bridge is open again, I can see the resource center, and it's usually full. My wife and I go to classes there. I know a lot of other people that go to classes there. I'm the one that Steve calls when it's 8 o'clock on Sunday night and the shit hit the fan someplace and he needs help with a chainsaw, or a tree went down the river, or there's a log, something across the road or whatever. I don't get paid for that. He's my friend. I use the resources. I go out and do it. I think these people did their homework. And to have a building and want to basically write a mortgage to refurbish it if it needs it, you don't write a 6-year mortgage. You write a 10-year mortgage, or a 15-year mortgage, or a 30-year mortgage. And to ask for it when they need it because of funding, that's what happens when you run a government organization that's not funded. I have 40 years of experience in the nonprofit groups, besides working full-time. And funding is just terrible if you're grant funded. They don't supply any money for ongoing resources. It's always for this project or that project or the next project. No oversight, no supervision, no nothing. I heard about this yesterday because of the ticker, and here I am. So I can't believe it's a question. I really can't believe it's a question.
Thank you. Anybody else? You already talked once, Herb. You know the rules.
No.
Couple sentences and that's all, Herb. Just out of respect.
Herb Lemko, 907
Okay.
Meadow Drive. Just to let you know that I go all the way back to Luke Holder. Every year that I was a liaison for that board, they talked about a millage. Every single year. They were scraping nickels together to come up with dimes. I think it's at the point where they cannot scrape any more nickels together. They need a 10-year mortgage for stability. They need to know where these funds are coming from, and they need to make it happen now. Thank you.
Thank you. No clapping. Thank you. It's all right. Anybody else? Yes, Marcia?
Even though I was
Yeah.
a speaker?
Briefly.
Okay, I would like to say that I was born here in Munson Hospital on an April day that was very snowy, just like this, so I'm accustomed to this. And I would like to say that I grew up here. My grandmother was the first female fishing guide in the state of Michigan. I learned to fish at a young age, and she taught me, as did my parents, that when you have the privilege to see beauty, you have the responsibility to see that it is taken care of. And that has been something I have been taught my entire life. So with privilege comes responsibility, and I feel that I have fulfilled my responsibility in helping the Grand Traverse Conservation District do their work, and I would like to thank you for your time in considering this millage request, because we all have a responsibility to keep our area beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. Bob, you were next.
How many school kids go through that center every year, roughly?
About 5,000.
I guess I was surprised to learn that there's really no money to update exhibits in there. I mean, it's a beautiful facility, and the exhibits are wonderful. I've been in there many times, but there's something I was kind of surprised to learn that, there's no money to update that. And that's something of a facility like that, you're going to want that. So.
Anybody else?
Can I just clarify, I mean, this is a state-mandated
Yes.
entity that is not being funded by the state. I mean, let's
Only through grants.
Let's just be clear, okay? I mean,
Yes.
let's just be clear. This is not a county.
That's correct.
This is not the county dropping the ball. This is the state dropping the ball.
Yes.
Just to be clear. I don't want anybody thinking we're hard-hearted and we haven't taken care of this, because this is the state's responsibility, and they have shirked it. So now we're going to
Yes.
give the voters an opportunity to step up where the state won't.
Correct.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, there is yes, Tom?
I do think that the millage proposal language should reflect the resolution language, up to and including the .1 mil and for a period of number of years. I don't know why we wouldn't want it in both
We
documents.
can change the resolution, right?
I kind of hung up
We
on
can
that.
change the resolution to
Yeah,
match.
okay.
They can do that.
And then the other question would be, can you absolutely not get a mortgage
No.
with a 6 or 8 year millage? You have to have a 10. I mean, I'm not a banker, I don't understand.
No,
Yeah, they weren't really talking
they're
about
not-
mortgages.
they
That
were
was an
just using
example.
that as an analogy. They're not
Okay.
looking for a mortgage.
They're not really looking for a mortgage.
Okay, good.
No.
Uh,
That was
because-
an
because-
example.
Because to make this sail through more easily, I would back down to the 8 year from the 10 year as my motion.
Do you want to change your motion, amend your motion to
Yeah,
that?
just to see it more
Okay.
likely get through.
And
Because
who
really,
was-
it's up to the voters, it's not up to us ultimately anyways. That's the point
Okay.
we need to repeat several times. So I would motion that
Amend
we
your
approve the
motion.
resolution for .1 mil,
Up to.
up to .1 mil for a period of 8 years.
And who was the second on that?
I was.
And you're okay with that? Okay. So we have a motion and a second for
And that's
8
for
years,
Au-
up
and
to
that's for
.1
August.
mils.
And that's for
And that's for August. Well,
For
if we
August.
approve it now, it would be in the
For
August ballot,
August.
so.
So that's the motion
Yes.
and the second.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any more discussion?
Again, I just think it's important to think about that, given their budget consideration, their budget year, we either go for it, if you want to see it on the ballot, you either vote now or forever hold your peace, I guess.
Yes, ma'am. Sarah? Yeah. Do you have something else? Roll call vote, please. I was going to, just for fun.
Why not? Mayor?
Yes.
Gorflet?
Yes.
Klaus?
No.
Johnson?
Yes.
Lathrop?
No.
Crawford?
Yes. So that is 4. So that's enough. Yes. Doesn't
Yes.
need a super. Yes. Okay. There you go.
Good luck.
8. Is that? Okay. All right.
Begins.
Now the
Work
fun begins, and now we are going to take a 10-minute break, because some people are going to be leaving, and we've been here for 2 hours. 20 minutes to 8.
2 hours?
Yes.
It seems like we just got.
Just went just like that, so we'll see you in 10. Let me bring this back here. We will reconvene, and we're going to move on to prosecuting attorney. We first have the approval of soil erosion and sedimentation control ordinance.
So move.
Support.
We've already talked about this. This is not anything new.
Yeah, it is. Moved by Commissioner Gorfulet, supported by Commissioner Klaus. Bob, do you have anything to enlighten us on this one, or?
No, I'll spare you the
Nothing different?
details.
Okay.
It is the same ordinance that was submitted before with a few just technical changes by the DEQ, and it meets Part 91. And there was a comment from the Conservation District criticizing the 20% slope requirement. But other than that, there were no other comments by DEQ or by the Conservation District.
Okay, Dan?
I just want to compliment you, Bob, because I know that you put a tremendous amount of work in this, and it's a really good document because of you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Tom?
So what is the slope then?
10.
10.
10?
Well,
No, it's 20.
No, it's
No, it's 20.
changed from 10 to 20.
Okay.
So
And
it's
It's currently
more
10.
steep.
It will be 20.
It's currently 10, it will be 20 on April 9th, which is the effective date.
And what'd you say the DEQ said about that?
No, it was the DEQ didn't care.
Oh, okay.
They don't care about anything that goes beyond Part 91. They only care that the ordinance fully complies with Part 91, which it does. And it was the Conservation District that was critical of the change from 10 to 20%.
Did they offer a compromise or no?
No.
No?
They just preferred that it stay at 10%.
So is it staying, which one is more onerous, the 10 or 20? I don't understand.
Well, this ordinance is less onerous on that point, because instead of having a permit for every time there's a project having a 10% slope, now it's 20%, which is a much higher grade, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so some people's minds, now we don't exceed the minimum we're at where everybody else is at. 20 is where everybody else is at. That's what the section, would you say 51?
Part 91. Does Part
91,
91
sorry,
address
yeah.
slope at all?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't require anything above and beyond. So I don't know if other ordinances have a slope requirement or not, to tell you the truth.
All right.
I move we approve soil erosion.
it's already
It's already been moved and supported. We just need a vote.
When did we?
We did that right
We started
away.
off with that.
Wow, sleeping.
Wake up, Bob. You need some more caffeine?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, let's do a roll call, please.
Gorfulet?
Yes.
Klaus?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Mayor?
No.
Crawford?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, now we move to the fee schedule.
Yes, and I have Dan Thorell, our...
Hold on, go ahead. Cheryl moved?
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Gorfulet, supported by Commissioner Johnson. Now Bob.
Yes. I have Dan Thorell, our environmental health officer, who will be in charge of the soil erosion program at the Health Department as of April 9th. And he's here to tell you why they're requesting change in some of the fees.
Okay.
Hi, Dan Thorell, Environmental Health Director. Actually, this fee schedule was voted on and approved back in November 15th to be exact, of 2017. And so there was we realized that we left something out. There's extraction sites or gravel pits, more commonly known as, throughout the county. There's a handful of them, and they operate continuously year to year. And the current fee schedule doesn't really address those. So after talking with current soil erosion staff, they, brought that to my attention, and we wanted to add that. So it's less onerous on the gravel pit owners. They're not really sites that are a concern. They don't contribute typically to any problems as far as sediment moving past the site or anything. It's all contained within. But they do require a permit, and they would require an annual inspection under this fee. So it'd be, so for like a new site, they would still have to get a commercial permit, and then once that's expired, they would go to a $200 per year permit, which would get them, and it's, we would go out and inspect them, make sure that everything's okay, and then, a lot of these extraction sites can operate for years and years and years and years. So that's kind of the setup that we wanted to put on there. And then we just added another thing, if somebody, was doing something without a permit, the ability to charge them a double permit fee if they're, not coming to get a permit, just trying to do it on the sly, and then they get caught. So, and then this thing, surety, which is part of the ordinance as well. This is more or less like a statement to inform the public about, that will determine it based on the scope of the project. It's really like a deposit. And it can be, it can be different for a small project versus a large project. And it's really if like the developer, or let's say a owner of a house or something walks away and doesn't stabilize the site or is resistant to stabilizing the site. It just makes sure that there's money put down up front that, if they wanted to get occupancy for like a house, let's say, in the middle of winter when we couldn't check the site, they couldn't grow grass, just to make sure they can move into their house, they put down a surety deposit, for instance, and it's based on the size of the project. A small project, maybe it's $500, a larger project, a couple thousand, because if we had to come back and stabilize the site, put down hydro seed and whatnot, we just have the funds to deal with it. I don't know that that's a big problem. It's just something that's done and addressed in the ordinance to make sure it's not a problem.
Questions? Yes, Cheryl.
Is the failure to obtain a permit a civil infraction?
It is.
So in addition to the fee that you're charging, they could also be hit with an additional fee on top of that?
They could, someone, if they didn't get a permit, or even if they had a permit, but they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, and they contributed to erosion and sedimentation, say, going into a stream or something, they could be fined.
Well, I'm talking specifically about the addition that you said, someone pursuing something without, trying to do something without the permit. So basically, you're going to punish them for doing it without the permit, but then they could also be hit with a civil infraction, which would also punish them. Is that correct?
They could be, but I don't see, if we're gonna do this, we're not gonna hit them with a civil infraction.
That's what I was hoping to hear you say, because I would not want to approve them being allowed to be doubly dipped. I think it should be one or the other.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm just saying, there would be authority under the law for a civil infraction, so I don't want to see people, foolishly breaking the law and being subject to that penalty and then having you penalize them as well, so.
Right, I totally agree.
Great, thanks.
Anybody else, Tom?
Since I'm just reviewing everything again, I already looked at this earlier, but it just occurred to me, I see extraction sites, so that'd be oil and gas.
No, actually, extraction sites for this purpose would be like gravel pits, like excavators that have gravel pits. They pull out soil, they bring in dump soil there, or maybe an extraction site where they're pulling topsoil off, things like that.
So as far as extracting oil and gas, this isn't a part of, it's not covered by this?
No, unless they needed a permit. I think there's certain exemptions in Part 91 for some of those activities.
Because my other thought was, what about injection wells? If somebody's constructing a new injection well?
If it's any activity that, requires a soil erosion permit, we're going to require the permit. So even if it's like, for instance, like mining has certain exemptions, farming has certain exemptions, oil and gas does too. But the roads to and from those sites are still covered under needing a soil erosion permit, so.
Okay. Maybe not tonight, but maybe you could find some of those exemptions and email me some of what that covers so that I know that better.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Anybody else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Next, Dan is going to give you a brief update on the transfer of soil erosion from the Construction Codes Department to the Health Department, which includes a complete change in staff in that department.
Okay?
Okay, so basically, this whole process
Is that on our
started.
agenda?
It's kind of part of it.
Part of the action request.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'll keep it very, very brief.
Thank you.
So basically, the actions over the past fall and just the steps going forward of approving the ordinance and everything, changing it from construction code to health department. The ordinance change, or adopting the new ordinance is an important piece of that because it names us as the enforcing agency. But basically, I've been working with the DEQ to revise, all the documents, application permits, site inspection documents, and tie those into with new software that we're using. So we're getting away from the 400 software and using something that's much more user-friendly. We can generate reports from it. We can track data. That's an important piece. All of the staff have been certified, and we have currently two staff members going this week through the certification with the DEQ. And with this, we will be transitioning the documents and everything in the office here on the third floor down to Lafreniere. So then it's going to be within the environmental health division down there, back to where all the other permits are gained by people. So it'll make it more efficient for that. And, basically on Monday, we're going to start doing soil erosion, so.
Okay.
And those persons are all county employees?
Yes. Yes.
They're not, we don't have subcontractors doing that work anymore?
I don't know that
There
we
were
did have
subcontractors in the past used in unlimited basis. So yeah, you're correct. In the past,
Oh,
we did use subcontractors.
But now they are just county employees who will be doing that
Correct.
work, full-time county employees.
Full-time, yeah. So when it transitioned from the current department here to the health department, in order to make it work for us, we made them, it had to be a sanitarian model, which, because we're out on sites doing well and septic inspections and then permits
I
and
just
whatnot.
wanted to assure
Yeah.
that they're county employees.
Yes,
Thank
they
you.
are county
Appreciate it.
employees. Yep.
Dan?
Thank you. I just want to make sure, the people that are going to do the soil erosion inspecting are going to be double trained. They're going to do the sanitation stuff and the soil erosion.
That is correct.
There won't be any separate soil erosion people.
No.
Okay. Thank you. It's a good way to do it. So you hit one bird with two stones, or two birds with one stone, whatever that is. Yeah, it's efficient. I'm glad to see it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's one other
Yes.
item on
Okay.
my action request, and that is I wanted to just update the board very briefly on the DEQ's review of our soil erosion sedimentation control program. You may recall that there was a program review back in July of 2015. We're still not out of the woods on that. There's been a lot of foot dragging by the DEQ as far as getting responses on that. In fact, it was about 2 years after the original program review before we finally received an administrative consent order indicating that once we approved that administrative consent order, that we would be placed on probation for a period of 2 years. We thought we were on probation, and so the county had agreed to waive its right to an informal hearing, and we had agreed to enter into a consent order. However, we didn't receive that administrative consent order for another year almost after we had made those agreements. So anyway, Dan and I, and formerly Gene Dorenzi, were all negotiating with the DEQ on that administrative consent order. There are some legal considerations that we probably need to work out as far as what we want to agree to, and I can explain those and Dan can explain those. And I'm thinking what would be best is maybe if we met with Chris and Nate and maybe one of the commissioners, you might want to decide who wants to do that, to give you an idea of what our concerns are at this point about the ACO. We've had some successes. For example, they were not originally going to allow us to transfer to the health department for the enforcement agent, and they were not going to allow us to adopt a new ordinance originally. So we've accomplished those two things. So at least we have the basics in place, but there are still some real concerns that we have about the ACO. And there's only so much we can do about an intractable State Department that we're dealing with. So anyway, that's my proposal, and maybe you could decide on a commissioner tonight that would like to join us for a meeting.
Volunteer or victim? Dan?
Yeah, I'd like to do it.
Okay, you get Dan.
And
Make it so.
unless there are other questions, I don't have anything else.
Thank you.
Think we're
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you very much. We are going to move on to the Road Commission. Thank you, Mr. Cook, for sticking with us.
Good evening,
They
thank
want
you.
some transportation fund bonds.
Okay, I'm here before you tonight to make a request on behalf of the Grand Traverse County Road Commission that if you would consider passing the attached resolutions. It's a two-part resolution request for Michigan Transportation Funds to bond our South Airport Road projects this year. The amount is $4 million. It will not exceed $4 million, and the payback period is 5 years.
And the Road
And we're-
Commission is paying it back.
And we're going to pay 100% of that, and we're in compliance with Act 51 as well as Act 143.
Questions? A motion?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's for Dean. What is the difference between, like, the bond that they want for roads and the bond that we were talking about for paying off the pension?
The bonds that we're asking you to pass or approve a resolution on tonight are specific. They're issued under a different state act, the Act 51, and the primary funding source there is a specific revenue, which is the revenue, the main revenue source that the Road Commission has. It's just a different payment
And their
mechanism.
revenue source is through the millage that we approved.
The county, if we would have issued pension bonds, they're general obligation bonds that are backed by the full faith and credit of the county. They're basically, they're a debt instrument, but they're just different, the payback, the method of paying back those bonds are
Okay.
different sources.
So the money source for the road commission is millage money? That's where
No.
they get their money?
No, this is their Michigan Transportation Funds, the share of the gas, the federal, state, and local gas tax.
Okay.
That is spelled out in the resolutions, and that's why the county's full faith and credit is not the primary source of credit here. We have the ability, if the Road Commission would not make the payments on these bonds, the county treasurer has the authority to access and capture those transportation funds. You're not putting your full faith and credit at risk here, but you are authorizing the issuance of the bonds. We have Mr. Cook gave me the Road Commission signed resolution. They approved that at their meeting on March 21st. They've done their part, and I would ask and hope that you would approve our resolution so we can get this project done.
I'm happy to approve it. I'm just trying to understand all the finance streams because it's...
Oh, there are other bonds that can be issued as well, but...
There's lots of tributaries and...
Maybe just to clarify, so as Dean mentioned, our primary source of funding is through the Michigan Transportation Fund. We call it MTF funding, and that's, as of last year, that was, again, that's up based on the new state road funding package. We received about $10.2 million in 2017. Our total budget for this year is over $21 million. We received just under $4 million a year with the road millage.
Okay.
So, and we're not going to use millage funds to pay this back. That, like Dean said, that'll come out of Michigan Transportation Funds and.
Thank you.
So this enables us to do the whole project up front and pay for it
Overtime.
overtime.
Yeah, we basically looked at South Airport Road and the money that we spend on an annual basis trying to patch it up, and we still get complaints and it's still not in good shape. We just, it was based on money, and we said, why don't we just do it now and pay it off over the next 5 years? And so.
And they're starting Monday, right?
Pardon?
And you're starting Monday on this, aren't you?
Well, actually, we received notice today that the contractor is going to postpone a week, so we'll be starting on the 16th.
Oh, good. I'll keep driving on South Airport for another week.
Anybody else? Do I have a motion?
So move.
I'll second it.
Moved by Commissioner Gorfulet, supported by Commissioner Mayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Dean, you're up. Budget update. Dean has good news for us, don't you?
Didn't we table that?
No, we tabled the.
No, we tabled
Circuit
the
Court.
circuit court.
Oh, sorry.
Well, we didn't table it, we took it off the
Moved it.
agenda
Yeah.
and moved it to April 18th.
You can cut me off at any time, but on page 141.
No,
It's
we
been a
want
long
to
night.
hear.
He's
The-
fired up now. So.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's a different subject. So we're very close to having the year closed, and the reason I say very close is you're never officially closed until you have the auditors review, and the auditors are in working diligently this week, and we're making good progress. But this is your standard report that you have been receiving, so it should look very similar to what you have. If you could turn to page 143, which is the revenues for your general fund. Wanted to point out the fourth column is the year-to-date totals compared to your budget, and you'll see that the budget performance, the revenues actually were higher than what was budgeted. The fund balance or the use of surplus is an amount that made up the $42 million budget, but that's really just a use of funds that you've had. And when you take that out, you can see that the main increase or favorable variance was the taxes came in at quite a bit higher. So on the revenue side, when you take out the fund balance, you actually realized more revenue than was planned, and that's a very good thing. So then if you turn to page 145 and look way down at the bottom, when you compare your expenditure total with the year-to-date activity, the expenditures for the year were less than budgeted, so you had the best of both worlds when it comes to a budget. Revenues were higher than anticipated or budgeted, and your expenditures were less. And I always like to give the departments and all of our elected officials credit for managing their budgets, because they do that throughout the year. They do take their budgets and the appropriations that you authorize for them very seriously, and if there are any issues, we're working with them to make sure that they stay within budget. So I did want to thank them for coming in under budget. And you can see that there's some real small numbers at the bottom of the page that most people my age can't even read because of our eyesight, but we planned on using almost 2.9 million of fund balance, and we actually used less than 600,000 of fund balance. So we'll end the year with a total fund balance of about 11.9 million. You started the year at 12.34 million. So that's a very good swing in what your actual results compared to what was budgeted. Cash positions are very, very strong at the end of the year, and I think everybody should be very pleased with the budget performance for 2017, and I don't expect to have any major changes when the audit is completed. We will be filing our reports with the state on time. Obviously, we have some additional information that we'll have to give to the state, and we are working diligently to make sure that that information is also on time, but we want to make sure that we report based on audited information, and not just what you're seeing here tonight, because the numbers could change. I don't expect the changes to be significant.
Awesome. Yes.
How much of that fund balance, I guess, what's the value of over our recommended fund balance?
The current policy is at 15%, and we looked at that earlier in the year, and then the question always comes up, well, how much of that fund balance is actually available? Your cash reserves at the end of 2017 are probably, we're over. We're over the 15%. The question then is, how much over are we? And you have to qualify that with the amount of money that we have tied up in some advances or some loans that we've made to other funds. The true amount that you have ready cash is $7.6 million, which is also over, and that 15% is based on your operating budget. So you are above the 15%, and we have our cash position is very good at this point in time. I know that we talked a little bit about what we're going to do with maybe with our pension and retiree health. We're not ready at this point to tell you what the plan is, but we have some ideas.
That was going to be one of my next questions was, well, I know OPEB, we really need to tackle that with the state mandate. And then also if we do have extra, we can use for the unfunded, but there's other things too.
One of the things that will happen, some of the final work that's done with the audit is the allocation of that pension liability across your funds. We don't have that done at this point. We are working on the OPEB valuation. We should have a draft report before the end of the month, but I can tell you that we are looking at those assumptions to make sure that we can really define what that liability is, and we don't have that information at this point, so.
Cheryl?
I would like to ask the administration to come to us with a proposal in the next month or so of how we can best utilize some of this fund balance, and I would like to hear some conversation about how we can perhaps do something for our employees. I want to just remind you of some of the conversation we heard earlier tonight from the Soil Conservation District about employees who haven't had raises, about people who are leaving because they don't have, significant contributions to, how they have to pay for their health care, et cetera. And those are all true about our employees as well. And I just think that any solution that we're looking at with regard to fund balances needs to include a conversation about our employees. So I would really like to have a recommendation within the next month or so. We've been talking for a long time. I think last October, when we actually passed a budget, we talked about trying to do something for our employees, and October was a long time ago, so.
We can start working on it.
You're talking about when?
Sure.
Commissioner, we heard that request before from you as well. We've spent a lot of time talking about the numbers that Dean is seeing. There's a lot of really exciting information that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And we are also under certain restrictions right now because of the negotiation process that we're in with our current bargaining units. We still have 3 out, and we are probably going to mediation and possibly arbitration as well.
And I appreciate that, but that's been a response we've had for over a year now, and our employees have been very patient. So I don't want to have everything wait on,
I agree.
We need to move forward.
I agree, and we have given wage reopeners letters to reopen negotiations after the audit report has been submitted, which will start in August. And we certainly have to come to you first. We're planning on a closed session on April 18th to talk to you about negotiation strategy, so you'll have more information at that point as well.
Dan?
Just a point, Commissioner, I really respect what you're saying, but should any one person on this board be able to direct what these 2 gentlemen do? Isn't this something that we should, as a board, say we want done?
And you have a say right now to be able to say.
Well, I'm saying,
Yeah.
for me to look at these 2 people and say, I'd like this or that done. I don't think I've got that power. I think that if that's going to happen, we as a board should direct them.
Well, I think what happens is, Cheryl said she'd like to initiate that, and but if any of us, I give everybody a chance to talk, so if anybody has an objection to that, to anything that is brought forth to have the administration do, I hope you guys realize that you can say, I'm not good with that. Maybe we could think of that in a
It's
different
not
way.
that I'm not good with it.
Right.
It's just that I think that we should act as a board.
Can I?
Yes.
Can
Yes,
I
sir.
propose, Cheryl, if you want to maybe put that in the form of a motion, second it,
We can
and
do
then
it
the
that
entire
way.
board.
That'd be cool. I just,
We
rather
can
than
do it.
having any one of us direct these people.
I got it.
Okay.
I get it.
And we should
Well,
be,
let me just clarify that you all know we've had these conversations. Everybody on the board knows we've had this conversation. I'm simply refreshing the memory of everyone here that we have had this conversation since at least last October, that we wanted to figure out if there was anything we could do for our employees. We said that when we passed the budget, so.
However, we've not passed it as a motion.
Correct.
And what
if-
I'm getting
yes.
at is I don't want anybody, including myself, directing our administrators. I think it's, as we should do as a board, it should be done through a motion.
Fair enough. That way they have,
Yeah.
the direction of the whole board. You like that?
Yep, that's
Okay.
great. And if we
If-
could do it for the first week or first meeting in May, that would give us time to have the audit report completed, and we'll do it first meeting in May.
You'll bring it back to us if
Certainly.
we direct you to do so right
Abs-
now.
Absolutely.
So move.
Go. Okay, well, can you
second it.
clarify what your,
My motion is that the administration come back to us with recommendations on what to do with the surplus in our, with the overage in our budget. And I'm not going to narrow it.
Yeah.
I mean, I want
No more
all-
specific than
If you were
that?
going to narrow, I was
I'm
going to
not-
add some stuff, so I like that, because
So no more
we have
specific.
capital needs
Okay.
and everything else.
Fair
that-
enough.
so-
Very good suggestion, and I know the administration likes it when we speak as a unified unit. Is a unified board. It's late. Okay, moved by Commissioner Gorfulet, supported by Commissioner Lathrop. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. You have a unified direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dean, for the very good news. And we will await more good news as we go along. Administration, we have, and I won't read the whole thing. Last meeting, we wanted to give an expression of gratitude to the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians for their work on the dam removal process over all these years. I don't know if there's anybody here from the tribe, but we have a resolution, the resolution in front of you.
So moved.
Okay. I'll support. So moved by Commissioner Johnson, supported by me. Any discussion? I believe it says
Can-
exactly what we put.
Yeah,
Yes.
and can I just add, because I have gotten questions about what has the county contributed fund dollar-wise to this project? And the only funds that we have contributed is to pay CRA as our project manager. So with the support of the tribe, and if you look at both dams collectively, the tribe is contributing over $3 million. So the county really has not had to use any fund dollars for the actual removal, river restoration work. I just, because I get questions about that, I just wanted to make it clear and put that on the record.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. Between the CRA and all the other entities that helped, I mean, they kept our involvement financially
Minimal.
at minimum,
Nothing,
which
almost
is
nothing.
great, because
Yep.
we had other issues we had to tackle. And it's something that had to get done, something, you had to do something on those dams, so.
What really helped us,
Yep.
what really helped us, I think, is that the Brownfield Fund that we got to, that was a brilliant stroke from somebody. Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We have the resolution supporting the sale of the Whitewater Township property to the DNR. So last June, we sold the Whitewater Township property to the Land Conservancy, and now they are going to turn around and do exactly what they said they were going to do.
So moved.
Sell it to the DNR. Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Johnson, supported by Commissioner Mayer. Any further discussion?
Just have one question.
Yes, and
Are
then
there-
Ron.
Are there any restrictions on what can be done with that property, as far as mining and? development and?
Go on that one?
I can't, development, no.
Yeah.
Mining,
I don't know if it had the mineral rights on that.
yeah, I don't know.
I believe we still have the mineral rights on that.
I think the DNR has
We
the
kept
mineral
the
rights.
mineral rights on
No,
that.
we kept them.
We
We
have
did?
the mineral rights on
Okay.
that. We did not sell that.
Well, we could just get a clarification at some point, but.
Okay. Ron, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, it's just, I won't be supporting it. I didn't support it back then, and yeah, I won't
Fair
be
enough.
supporting it tonight.
Okay. Anybody else? Roll call vote, please.
Klaus?
No.
Johnson?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yes.
Gorflat?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes. Thank you. Old unfinished business. We have the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee.
So moved.
This,
Support. Keep talking.
it's late. What do we need to just reaffirm this? Do we need to appoint other people?
So-
What happens here?
So yeah, the first step is you should reaffirm it, it recreates it. And then at some point, we are going to have to appoint a criminal defense attorney to it, as well as other members. But for now, for tonight, all you got to do is reaffirm it.
Okay. Tom?
I just want to be clear for everybody, the public as well, obviously. The purpose of the mental health jail ad hoc and the purpose of the CJCC, I just want to be certain that there's not a misunderstanding as to which one group is doing, the other group is doing, because my question would be, is the CJCC overseeing any kind of changes in the provision of mental health care? And would we be also, as I remember, when we formed the jail ad hoc, it included the mental health care, and that was sort of our short-term concern at the jail, was mental health services, not building a new jail. That's a longer-term concern. So is there a difference? Or do these things overlap? Are we clear as to what the difference between the ad hoc and the CJCC? Are we clear about that?
It says right in here, the committee shall collect and analyze data related to the county jail and criminal justice system that shall be used in future planning efforts and form the basis for any recommendations. So this would be, they are going to do needs assessment, master plan. These are the people that would provide for you the data that you would use to then make future decisions on the jail and do we need a new one, do we need refurbishment, things like that. This committee would get all the information together for you.
Okay, so
Correct?
we're actually,
That's correct.
the jail ad hoc will give them a task, do this, do that.
Or they already
Vice
have their
versa.
tasks,
Okay.
and they would then bring those things to the jail ad hoc, maybe with recommendations, maybe with just data, but they will be the support system for the jail ad hoc when you get down to the nitty-gritty of how many beds do we need, how much, that sort of thing, when talking about refurbishing or building the jail.
Yeah,
It
'cause
doesn't
right-
change your task at the beginning here to figure out sort of an immediate Band-Aid, sort of, for the mental health issues in the jail.
Yeah, so short-term, mental health, that's my main concern right now. not
And that's what the
building a new
jail ad hoc committee is supposed to be working on right
Right.
now. Yes, sir.
So-
This committee is a information gathering and recommendations,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no power, we don't make any decisions.
No, they would bring
still be the
things
board.
to the ad hoc,
Yeah.
and the ad hoc would then, yes.
Cool.
But just so you know, if we adopt this resolution as presented, they do say that they are adding a representative from community mental health. So there
Mhm.
is the community mental health component as well.
They
So
just
I
have a
think that's-
representative.
I think that speaks to Tom's question.
Yes.
about-
They will have a representative because community mental health does work in the jail.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
understand that. Okay.
Okay? Did we have a motion in a second? We did.
Who's actually going to head that up?
They will choose a chair.
Yeah,
They will choose a chair.
will they have a chair and a co-chair, or just a chair? or-
I don't know what their bylaws say specifically.
Okay. I'm just concerned that it actually has some teeth.
It does.
Because it didn't do much, I'm not sure exactly what happened the last time. but it goes back to 2014 when the resolution was there, and then it just sort of, I don't know.
There was no money to do anything.
Yeah,
at
was that the
point.
main
So
reason?
there was really, I
Yeah.
don't think
There
it
was
got
not a big
pushed,
impetus
you know?
to continue on once the data was collected, I think, and so it kind of just thought, well,
I'm
but
just
now there
concerned
is.
about us repeating ourselves.
I don't think we are. With the addition of the jail ad hoc, I think there is a purpose now.
And we're at a point where we're going to have to do something.
Exactly.
I think this board has a resolution to make this happen.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think so too. We're not going to let it fall through the cracks at all.
It's got to happen.
Yep, and it will have teeth.
Yeah.
And they will use them. Okay, we didn't catch the motion in the second. There was a lot going on, so who moved? Did somebody move this already?
Yeah, I move.
Okay.
And I probably supported it, maybe, or did you?
No, I didn't.
I think I
but
had you,
will.
Johnson, as
Okay.
supporting it. so-
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Gorfulet, supported by
Going on 3
Commissioner
hours.
Johnson. I know. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is reinstated. We will get back to appointing certain people at a different time. Okay, that one is done. Animal control ad hoc, Madam Chair, of that.
Really, the only thing that I wanted to bring forward tonight was that our ad hoc committee met last week, and we agreed that we would come back to this body and ask this body to consider whether or not a millage proposal should be put on the ballot in August. Again, with Dean's help, we had heard a recommendation for, I think it was .37 mills, which would generate about $150,000 and would cost the average homeowner about $3 a year. The request was for three years, an initial 3-year millage. So we as a committee did not have a position on this other than to bring it back to this board and ask this board to determine whether it would support placing this on the ballot in August, and I would make that motion in order to move the discussion, so.
Do we have support?
Yeah, I support it, but
Okay.
are we going
So
to,
moved by Commissioner Gorfulet and supported by Commissioner Mayer.
are we going to put it on the agenda and have the public see it as a millage request for the August 7th ballot?
It's already in here. It's already on the action request.
Okay. It's just stated differently on the agenda, though.
Recommendation, yeah, it is, Dan.
I fully support putting this before the people. I think it's important. But I can't support it done in August for the same reason I couldn't do the last millage. I want it done in November. It's just, I want it in front of as many voters as possible to get a real sounding of what the citizens think. So I do think I'll probably vote for it, but I want it in front of all of the, as many citizens as possible. And there's really no rush to have to do it in August. So that's just me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add, is I don't think it matters whether we do it August or November at this point, financially for them, so. Correct, sir, Mr. Dean?
That is correct.
Only from a budgeting standpoint, we will have our budget set usually in October.
Yeah.
Well, we vote in
You can
December,
amend it.
though, so. And you can, I mean, you could set up the budget as if it's going to pass or either way, so.
You have to set up a budget as if it's not,
Yeah.
actually. We're all conservative to do that.
Well,
Yes.
I'm not
Hold on.
going to debate the actual issue because, like I said earlier this evening, we have talked about this for about 1.5 years now. So, you know, the issue is really whether we're going to let the voters decide. This isn't us deciding whether we're going to fund this or not. It's asking the voters whether they are going to support it or not. And I think the voters have been, I think the citizens have been pretty patient because we've taken a long time to get to this point, and I think we should give them the opportunity to vote on it, so I
Tom?
hope that you'll support that.
Well, I'm wondering if, just to take the other side, I'm wondering if $112,000 is, that's the licensing fees. Let's see, about how much are you short for $170,000? Do you think the $170,000 is enough?
Yes, I think so. I mean, for you've got three, if this passes here, this board, and it goes to the voters and it passes, you've got 3 years in to prove that that's a viable number. I mean, if they come up and say, look, we've got an animal problem and we can't shoot all the animals that are around now, we want to use animal control. I'm just joking, so don't get into then you can adjust it in 3 years, I think.
So we're taking the lower side of the budget of 280,000 to 300,000 as
Correct.
far as what we need, not going to the
Initially.
the higher
yes,
side. Okay,
Correct, and only asking for 3 years.
I thought it was worth mentioning.
Yes,
Maybe,
thank you.
we could be lowballing it as to what they actually need.
As you know, I've been I haven't been on the fence of this, really. I haven't supported it
No, but I think you've crossed it.
for a long time. Yeah, I fell on the fence. And part of my big fear, and we've had that tonight, is a lot of millage proposals coming to us, but then I have to weigh the thought of, well, I'm elected by the voters to make these tough decisions, but then you also say, well, the number of votes that elect us are pretty slim, really, if you think it compared to all the voters. So if you give them a chance to just make their say, maybe that's the best way to do it. As I was telling you before, I think I'm right a lot of times, but I'm not always. So I'll be supporting this.
So we're sitting here tonight, Dean gives us the good news that we have this money and they're going to come back with a recommendation of what to do with the money. So if this doesn't pass by the voters, which if it's being voted on, I'd like it in November, not August. But if this comes back from the voters and the voters don't support it, are we going to dip into the general fund and support it? Or are we going to do what the voters want us to do and get rid of it or take it down to what the voters want?
Guess we'll have to cross that bridge.
I guess we'll have to decide at that point.
I mean, my
We have to hear
personal
from
thought
them.
is on this, that I think we have the money in the budget, and we will continue to have that in there for this. But there's also a lot of counties that do this as a millage, because it's important to their, just like all the other millages we do. So, in a roundabout way, it still helps both entities out. It'll help animal control, help us, the county directly. The taxpayer will decide if they want to support another $5 a year, whatever. We've got a lot of millages coming up in the next few years again. The phone will be coming up in a few years for renewal and that kind of stuff, so.
That's the one.
We also don't know who's going to be sitting here
I know
right up to
one
there.
that's not, so.
I know.
Party at 11.
Yes. And I
Okay.
don't care either way on November or August personally. I just think, again, it goes back to, like I was saying with the other entity, if, for budgetary reasons, even though we have some time there, again, if it's important to you, you're going to get out and vote, I think, so.
Cheryl,
So
Do
my
you wanna-
motion is on the table.
is your motion on the table for August or
It is.
November?
It is for August.
Are you willing to consider changing it to November? I'm just asking.
Are you willing to amend to November based on what you've heard?
No, it's just.
No, I'm going to leave it in August.
Okay,
So just so you're aware, we are going to have to
they have to come back with
draft
ballot language.
and then you'll have to approve that.
Yep.
Okay.
So we won't be voting on it tonight then?
We will
We
be
are
voting
voting on
on
whether or
directing
not
them
to do it.
Okay,
to
gotcha.
come up with ballot language.
And then we'll vote on the language.
Yes.
Not to this process.
Okay. Let's take a roll call vote.
Okey-doke. Johnson.
Yes.
Lathrop.
No.
Mayor.
Yes.
Gorfulet.
Yes.
Klaus.
No.
Crawford.
Yes. It failed, didn't it?
No.
No,
it
No.
no, it
Oh,
passed.
sorry. I was trying to count. It's late.
It's a
All
long day.
right. Let's do that
She
again.
can read
Or
it.
she can read
She
it
can
for
I
you.
can just read it. Mayor Gorfulet, Johnson, and Crawford voted yes. Lathrop and Klaus voted no.
Okay. We're going to move on to Administrator Search. Deputy Administrator Bob has some thoughts. he'd like to share.
Yeah, and I forgot exactly what I was doing.
You called me
no, you know-
you talked to me last week about
I know.
this.
When I looked at this pool of candidates, and I mean, people in the county should be just thrilled beyond belief at the candidates, quality candidates we got.
Yes.
We had some excellent candidates. It kind of hit me that I know we have left that to the administrator to get a deputy administrator, but does this board, as a group, want to tackle, while we're doing this, maybe finding the deputy administrator, and helping out whatever administrator we get. And again, I'm just throwing it out there for discussion. And again, because to me, there was a lot of candidates in that pool, and then of course, it's a whole different animal at looking at those candidates. And we haven't seen the candidates that applied before, which would be nice. But we had some quality candidates applied that I think could possibly do that job very well. And the original reason to get a deputy administrator was to keep us from being in this position. And I think maybe this board, maybe just once, had some due diligence to say, let's fill this position as a group here to think about it and go from there. So.
I will just tell you that I spoke to James about this, and he recommended that we not do both at the same time.
Okay.
There are boards, I believe that we would have to change our board rules, correct? So that the deputy administrator would also have a contract. They would not be an at-will employee, correct?
Well, I mean,
They would answer to the board.
You could certainly structure it that way. It's not changing your board rules. It would be changing your hiring, your staffing plan, and changing the description for the deputy administrator to say that that person is, I'm sorry, it's getting late. Reports directly to the board.
Reports directly to the board.
Yeah, and
So
you could, like I said, you could do it for one time to say, look, and again, it's just something that struck me, and I could be, again, completely
Cheryl.
wrong.
Could be.
Well, I don't think you're completely wrong, and the reason that I think that this is worth our consideration is that we don't have any succession planning in the organization, and we're living proof of that right now, because even though our former administrator left for personal reasons, she could have gotten hit by the pie truck, which is always my example. You get hit by the pie truck. So if she'd gotten hit by the pie truck, we'd be in the same situation. And guess what? There's a lot of pie trucks out there. So we don't have any depth at the top. We have the person we hire, and then we have nothing. So there's absolutely every good reason for us to consider not only hiring the CEO, but the second in command, because that person not only would then be training and would be perhaps the person that we would look for to being the CEO if that person were to leave. It's good management. It's just good management.
Dan?
I agree. I'm a little confused about it. I want to get it clarified. I agree. I think this county is going to need an administrator and an assistant administrator. I really do. Are you saying that the board who gets to hire the assistant administrator?
This board.
That's what I'm throwing that out
That's what we're
there.
talking about. In the
Yeah.
past, first of all, there isn't a big history, because there haven't
Yeah,
been
there's
that
only
many
one.
deputy
One, so-
administrators.
You know,
okay?
somehow I like the idea of us hiring them both.
So do I.
I kind of like it. I don't know why yet. It's just
Well-
it's a basic,
I'm wondering if we could come up with some plan to, with the help of the new administrator, have, as Cheryl sometimes puts it, advice and consent, at least. I don't know about us hiring a deputy for an administrator without their input at all, because these are two people that work together day in and day out, and to just hand them someone that might not mesh well with them, that they don't have any say over, I don't know about
But they work
that.
for us, they don't work for the administrator.
And my
Well,
concern is,
okay.
my concern is if we get, say, whoever we hire, and this is just hypothetical, if they have somebody that they like that they bring on board that's not a fit here,
Yeah.
and then we start that process all over again, I don't know.
I think that it's the board and the new administrator together
And I don't know if we want
hire
to
the
wait
deputy.
For a new administrator.
for a new administrator, because they're going to have a lot of other things, I think, to start tackling. I could be wrong.
But also,
Interesting
James
idea.
did sort of caution against using the exact same pool of
Yes.
people,
Oh,
because
yeah.
these people did not apply for
Exactly.
deputy
No,
administrator.
but what I'm saying is there was a lot of, in my mind, in that pool of candidates, there were a lot of people that I think if we had a posting for a deputy
Deputy.
administrator would have applied.
And I'm wondering if, given the opportunity, if they knew that they were not going to make the cut for the CEO position, if they would be interested in the deputy position.
That might be something we could
Yeah,
direct
'cause
James to do on some of the
He'll be
candidates.
here next week, right?
He will be here next Wednesday, and that's something that we can discuss with him as to, we can say, I like this person, maybe not in our top 10, but don't forget about this person, and maybe contact them quickly and ask if they would be interested. Yes, Dan?
This might be best discussed in closed session. Are we going to be able to discuss a deputy administrator in closed session?
No, we aren't.
No. All right.
Can we see the candidates who've already applied
For,
deputy?
What does that bring about, though, if we,
I don't think there's been a posting.
it was posted, yes.
It was posted,
It was
and
posted.
there were about a dozen people who applied, was
It was
my
posted at the end of the
understanding,
year.
and then they pulled it because obviously we didn't have a CEO. But there are
there was a period, but I don't know what else that brings
Well, I'm
as far
just
as the
saying, it may-
anonymity. If I said
We're
that
going to
right.
be looking at that.
Yeah.
The pool in a closed session next week, which Chris said we are allowed to do.
The pool of people who applied for as the administrator
So
only.
you can look at, you can look at those applications where the applicant requested confidentiality.
Okay, gotcha,
But not next week.
gotcha. No, understood.
Yes.
And
Tom?
again, that was just to throw this out here to
Yeah.
start some discussion.
We can start thinking about how we want to do that. Tom?
Well, I think there's a lot of merit to that idea of having the board make the decision on the deputy because we have neither, and that's not been the case in the past. We weren't operating with neither deputy or administrator. So I think you have to be really careful about the people who have already applied for administrator if you start to change the job description. That's
Yes.
a big deal. And I'm certain that there was a little pool of applicants for deputy administrator because at that point, Gene was here, and I'm certain that there are many people that applied by the deadline, and they did everything that the job posting was about. I mean, they met the requirements of the job posting. They posted, or they sent in their applications. There are some applications they were told to be put on hold because.
No CEO.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it was after Vicki left, but it was while Gene was here, I'm pretty sure.
But she wasn't given hiring authority,
the-
so that's the whole point.
That's why.
Well, we
One person.
wouldn't have wanted to do it anyways at that
Right.
point, because you want to get the administrator first. But you don't have to just rely on the administrator to make the selection of the deputy.
Right.
So we could change that.
We could.
I think you might not want to always do it that way, but this time seems to make a lot of
Should have some
sense.
say.
Because we don't have either, so.
Right.
But there are applicants on hold for deputy that already followed the process for that are just on hold.
Well,
That's what they were told. They were sent a
And
letter
I think we'd have to
sometime, so,
restart the whole
yeah.
process if we decide as a group
But
that's
the
what
point
we
is, we
want.
might be able to ramp it up with the pool that we've got, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Given
how
the
about,
opportunity.
And I always go back to my last thing that I always like to add for anything that's as important as deputy administrator, that we have to post the job and allow a certain amount of time. If
Yes.
we're going to change what we did in the past.
Sure.
We need to let everybody know. We need
Absolutely.
to let people apply if they want to apply. And then the people who are in this pool for administrator, they would be able to figure that out, and they could apply if they'd like to, so.
Yep. Ron, and then I have a suggestion.
Hiring a deputy administrator for the administrator, I can't buy into that. We're going to want to hold the administrator accountable, and we're going to want to hold the deputy administrator accountable independently. We don't need an administrator if we're going to do that. The administrator needs to have his or her own deputy. I don't want to start hiring department heads. I want to hire an administrator and let the administrator administrate. That's what I want to do. And I must have got a different packet of candidates. I truly had 8 candidates that I pulled out, and today I went through it and I've got 4 that I feel good about, and not feeling that I'm I feel like I'm settling. I feel like.
Out
a
of
lot the-
52?
Yeah,
I really don't feel that, I did last time, I don't feel that way this time.
I have 22.
Okay, so I have an idea.
Okay.
So let's all sort of think on this as we go. And next week, I've been tasked with sort of coming up with an agenda for next week. If I put on the agenda that we want to discuss with James, who we've hired to help us with this, can I put this on there? That we want to discuss with him his ideas?
I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, because I don't want to take the
No,
focus away from
couple
what
minutes.
our job is next.
Just to get his opinion on this, and then Sonny will be there too, to put his words in there. So I can put this back on there for April 11th, and then we have one candidate who did not mark confidential that we need to discuss. I think we should discuss that candidate before we go into closed session rather than when we come out. Because when we come out, we may have already had our things set. So there is one candidate that we need to discuss in open session. Yes, sir.
I just want to ask Chris, is there any reason why we can't discuss the candidate that said they would be open in closed session?
Yeah, because the Open Meetings Act doesn't allow that. Open Meetings Act only allows the closed session where the applicant requested confidentiality.
Okay. It's going to be tough, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. So we have to discuss that one application before we go into closed session. So we'll put these two things on there.
And we had one withdrawal. Make
Yes.
sure if you're-
Had one
if you're
withdrawal,
looking.
yes, we got that. Okay, so I will help Chris Kramer do that tomorrow. She's probably listening.
So this is closed session next Wednesday?
Mostly, yes.
Except for the one candidate?
Except for the one candidate and a discussion with James about going about a deputy and
So
what
it
his
is,
thoughts are.
to be technical, it is a special meeting where you're going to vote to go into closed session.
Yes.
All
And when
right.
we
It's not
come
a
back.
closed session until
yeah.
you vote on it.
But when we come back from that closed session, I would expect that we would have a list of candidates to direct James to bring here for interviews.
That's my hope.
Okay,
And we're meeting at 5:30?
yes.
Okay, I'll bring the pizza.
I was going to say, somebody needs to
I'll bring
bring
the beer.
snacks.
I'll bring the pizza.
You bring pizza?
I'll bring
All right.
pizza.
And I'm
I mean,
sure you said
I'm going to
Coke.
learn to shut up one
I'm
day.
sure
but I
you
don't
said
know
Coke,
Said
didn't you,
beer.
Bob? That's what I heard. Okay. Okay. Regional morgue ad hoc. We have had one additional, correct, Cheryl? One additional person that wanted to be added to that ad hoc. We have Dr. David Martin, who's a retired infectious disease physician.
Excellent.
Who wanted to be added to that.
Excellent guy.
And then, in addition to Dr. Martin, we have TJ Phillips, Don Yankoff, Cheryl, and myself, and Tom has decided to focus only on the jail, correct?
That's fine.
So, yes, so those are the 5 that we have. We don't need to officially appoint?
I also want to let the board know, I got contacted by Vaughn Seavolt. Vaughn is a funeral home director in town, and he had interest in it as well, just to let the board know.
Okay. I think we're good with 5
I
right
think
now.
ultimately, there are going to be hopefully a lot of people who will come to the ad hoc meetings, just like they did with animal control, et cetera, and they'll give us their.
Yes,
They could
please.
still have plenty of input.
If you have anything to add to our regional morgue ad hoc, when we have our
Discussion.
meetings, we'll have them probably here, so they'll all be open. So if you have things to add or resources to help us, please. Okay. We don't have to vote on that, 'cause that's my ability, right? To just appoint, okay. So done. No new business? Second public comment. Anybody have any comments that have not already been made? Anybody's asleep out there? Okay. Commissioner department reports? Everyone's looking tired. Notices? No closed session? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, you guys.